Ezekiel couldn't control his wide smile all through their time together. Alyssa didn't hate him anymore. She was more comfortable with him, and she initiated their conversations herself. He didn't need to force a conversation on her or plead for her attention. She had changed from how she was acting the day before. Her sudden change surprised him and also made him thrilled at the same time. When they entered the banquet as a family, he couldn't miss the surprised looks on everyone's face. Most people had thought he would come with Cindy after the speech Alyssa had given the day before, but they were wrong. It brought him a rare sense of joy to be with his family. He was so happy that he felt tears brimming at the corner of his eyes, tears of joy. This had been his wish since he had that big fight with Alyssa. He had been hoping that she would come to forgive him for his mistakes and take him back like before. He never thought it would come this easy. The moon goddess had answered his prayers. Though everything was going back to the way it was, he still had one issue. His son still feared and hated him. It made him sad. He had wronged the poor boy so much that he didn't even want to spare his father a glance. He didn't miss the pleading look in Aiden's eyes when he went into their room earlier. It took a lot of work for him to even hold the boy's hand when they were entering the banquet. Even though things were okay between him and Alyssa, it felt incomplete if his own son didn't want him. Even as they ate, Aiden acted like Ezekiel didn't exist to him. Despite sitting on the table with them, he talked to only Alyssa and ignored Ezekiel whenever he asked a question. It didn't make Ezekiel mad since he knew he was at fault. Rather, he felt like the third wheel. As they excluded him in their interactions, Ezekiel regretted everything he did to them. He should have never trusted nor believed Cindy so easily and, in the process, hurt his family. All he could do was bear in silence and try to make it up to Aiden. So when Aiden asked for a dessert, he volunteered to get it himself. He would do anything to make his son love him again. As he picked out Aiden's favorite dessert, he felt someone approach him. He looked up from what he was doing only to see Cindy. "Ezekiel." She called out with a faux smile on her face as she tried so hard to hide her hatred and jealousy. Ezekiel didn't spare her more look and then turned to face what he was doing. Interacting with Cindy would only put all of his hard work into jeopardy, but Cindy didn't stop. She walked closer to him and, "I see you brought your family here with you instead of me." She pouted as she wrapped her arm around his in a coquettish manner. Ezekiel sighed within himself. She's still so stubborn and annoying. Can't she just get the memo and leave him alone? He used his other hand to pry her hold on him before turning to fully face her. "Why would I bring you in the first place?" he asked, an eyebrow raised. Cindy's mouth opened, but closed back immediately, not expecting such a question. Usually, he would have comforted her and given her an excuse. Why is he acting like this all of a sudden? Cindy felt pure agitation as she felt everything wasn't going as planned, but she couldn't stop now. She had already promised Alyssa, and she would do anything to make sure it happens. Is it because of Alyssa? Do you think because you both have settled, she wants you back? Want if she's just using you? I don't know what you're seeing, but from what I can tell, she's up to something, and you aren't going to like the ending," she said, unable to hide her deep-rooted hatred anymore. Whenever she says something about Alyssa, Ezekiel had always believed her, so she didn't think it would be any different now. Ezekiel stared at Cindy silently, an unreadable expression on his face. He never knew she would be such a scheming and lying bitch. He could easily tell Cindy was lying so he could leave Alyssa again. "What are you still waiting for? Send the fool away!" His wolf growled in anger and disgust. Seeing the angry look on Chia's face, Cindy almost let out a smirk. She thought she had gotten to him. She moved closer to him and was about to continue with her lies when, "Leave," Ezekiel uttered coldly. Her eyes dilated in shock. "What?" she asked, hoping she misheard him or he wasn't actually talking to her. "Get out of my sight, or I'll make you regret slandering your Luna." Ezekiel seethed in anger. "Your Luna?" Cindy didn't expect such a reaction from him. His anger made her realize that if she didn't do anything, she was going to lose him to Alyssa forever, so she decided to use her last card. Her shocked expression immediately turned to a sad and remorseful one. "I'm so sorry for what I said. I never wanted to insult her. It's just that these days I've been so emotional. My miscarriage makes me act in ways I shouldn't," she said as she forced down tears from her eyes. For the first time in a long time, her tears didn't move Ezekiel. He badly wanted to lash out at her for using their dead child as an excuse, but he stopped himself. There were a lot of people around, and he couldn't make a scene in front of them, so he just walked away. "You're too soft. You should have taught that wench a great lesson so she would never mention our mate with her filthy mouth ever again." Ezekiel's wolf snarled at him. Ezekiel didn't answer. He knew he would have done worse if there weren't many people around. When he got to where his family was, he saw an alpha hovering around his mate. He was reminded of Cindy's words, but he brushed it off immediately. Alyssa isn't someone like that. If she wanted to do something like this, she would have done it with Louis. His wolf growled protectively as he attempted to take control so he could go meet the other alpha, but he calmed down immediately when he saw that it was just a misunderstanding. The man had mistook her for someone else, but he left immediately the moment he realized his mistake. Was his mate that beautiful that everyone hopes for her to resemble someone they like? His intense gaze alerted Alyssa. When their eyes met, a wide smile appeared on his face without him knowing. He quickened his pace as he walked closer to them. He was unwilling to spend any more time away from his family. Cindy watched their interactions from the shadows, her hatred for Alyssa increasing as the second passed. Their intimacy disgusted her and also made her blood boil. She badly needed something, rather someone to unleash her anger on, but her stupid servant was out of sight. She couldn't find Amy anywhere, so the only thing she could do was attack the culprit herself. Later, when Alyssa left the table to head to the restroom, Cindy followed her. She waited for her at the hallway close to the restroom because it was empty there, and there were a lot of ladies in the restroom. After waiting for a few minutes, she saw Alyssa emerged from the restroom. "Finally, the prostitute has decided to show her wretched face," she said at the top of her voice, but Alyssa ignored her. She acted like Cindy's wasn't there and walked past her. One of the things Cindy hated the most in her entire life was being ignored. She had always been the center of attention, and she wanted it to stay the way for a long time. "Can't you hear me talking to you?" Cindy asked as she ran and stood in front of Alyssa, making her halt immediately. "And how is that my problem?" Alyssa asked back, her hands wrapped underneath her boobs. "Wow." Cindy let out an angry chuckle. "You think you're better than me now?" she asked in fury. "I've always been better than you. You chose not to admit it." Alyssa answered in a calm tone. Cindy's face grew red. "The Omega bitch thinks she has ranked up since she's Ezekiel's favorite now. You're acting like this because of Ezekiel. Sorry to break it to you, but he will never love you. He's just using you to pass away time because we hit a rocky phase in our relationship." Cindy mocked. Alyssa's gaze didn't quiver. Instead, she held an amused look on her face. "I think you're being mistaken. I'm his mate, his Luna, and the mother of his heir, not you. You were the one that was used, and now he has returned back to his senses because he realized you aren't worth his time and effort. You were nothing to him, other than just a used sex toy that he doesn't even want anymore." Alyssa's expression was calm, but her words and tone held venom in them. Cindy felt a lump on her throat. She didn't know what to say that would irk Alyssa. It felt like all her words were bouncing back to her. The expression on Cindy's face almost made Alyssa laugh. "You see, I don't want to be in the midst of a used toy, so I wouldn't catch the disease, too. If you would excuse me." Alyssa let out a snicker and walked away. Cindy's bruised ego wouldn't let Alyssa leave so easily. She wanted Alyssa to feel 10 times what she was feeling, so she followed after her and stood in front of again, not minding that she was backing the stairs that led to the banquet hall. "You are the reason I'm like this," she screamed in anger. "Me? How come?" The drama was getting more exciting for Alyssa, and she was willing to also fight to the end. "You and that bastard son of yours. He's an unworthy bastard, and you made him murder my child just so you can take the future alpha spot," Cindy said. Alyssa could take anything but an insult directed to her son. That was what she would never take. Enraged, she slapped Cindy hard across the face. Cindy, on the other hand, only laughed. Your assaults means nothing to me as long as the truth comes to light. How will your child survive if I publicly accuse him of taking mine?" Cindy asked her. Alyssa cocked her head to the side, her gaze as cold as ever. She knew what Cindy was planning to do, and she was going to use it to her advantage. As Cindy turned to head down the stairs, Alyssa violently shoved her down. Cindy could have easily steadied herself as she was a werewolf and was stronger than other humans, but she decided to use it to her advantage. There was no CCTV camera nearby, so no one would know what truly happened when she decided to make Alyssa the culprit. She let out a yelp as she tumbled down the stairs dramatically. What she didn't expect was that Alyssa would fall too, using her as a cushion when they got to the last stair. That way, Alyssa didn't have any injury, unlike Cindy. Since Cindy was the one injured, she figured her plan would still work. Cindy yelled loudly to attract people towards them. Ezekiel came running the moment he saw Alyssa laying next to Cindy. When Cindy saw him, she seized the moment immediately. "Alyssa pushed me. I didn't do anything to her, but she just turned aggressive towards me and pushed me down the stairs," Cindy cried out in a pathetic tone. "She's lying. I only tried to help her when I saw her slipping down the stairs. She just had a miscarriage, and I didn't want her to suffer more. I didn't expect I would fall too." Alyssa countered as she held a sad and remorseful face. Murmurs filled the large hall when everyone heard Alyssa's explanation. What they were most fixated on was the fact that Cindy was pregnant. Everyone around knew that she was the alpha's lover, but they didn't expect she would get pregnant for him when they weren't bonded, and he still had a mate. They all showed their displeasure upon hearing the news. She knows that Alpha already has an heir, and she still went ahead to get pregnant for him. Did she want to steal the Luna title that bad? Why can't she just focus on pleasuring the Alpha instead of aiming too high? This is the reason I'll never let my husband get a lover. Who knows how vicious and greedy they will get? The lady was only looking out for her husband's lover, and she had the guts to slander her. She should have let her fall. Like the vicious words circulating the entire hall wasn't enough, Cindy watched as Ezekiel walked past her to Alyssa's side instead. "Are you all right?" he asked in concern as he helped her rise to her feet. Alyssa didn't answer him. Her eyes were mainly on Cindy. Ezekiel noticed her stares and turned to face Cindy. "What the hell is wrong with you? Why would you lie like that when she was only trying to help you?" he asked angrily. Cindy's lips quivered. Watching how Ezekiel rebuked her with Alyssa protectively by his side, she realized her plan had backfired. Now, she couldn't even use her miscarriage as an excuse anymore. As she watched the pair leave together, her quest for vengeance only grew stronger. She vowed to make Alyssa and her child suffer, then she'll reclaim Ezekiel, no matter what it took. Since Cindy had made her move, Alyssa decided to move to the next step of her plan. She was going to add more fuel to the fire by confronting Cindy alone. "So, what's your plan?" Amy asked Alyssa again. She wanted to be rest assured she was fighting a winning game. Any mistake and her life would be over. Not like she really had a life with Cindy, but she doesn't want to die. Especially now that she has been constantly daydreaming about the day she would finally escape from Cindy's evil clutches. "I'm going to confront her alone," Alyssa answered curtly. "What?" Amy's eyes dilated in shock. "You can't do that. It's what she wants. If you go alone, your life might be in danger," Amy said as she tried to convince Alyssa. "Relax. I'll not actually go alone. I'm not stupid. You'll be there with me." Amy's eyes quivered upon hearing that. Staying with Cindy is like living in hell. What if she finds out that she had colluded with Alyssa? She couldn't risk her life. She was about to dismiss Alyssa's idea, but Alyssa was quick to explain. "You won't stay with me. Cindy can't know we're working together yet." Amy's panicked state eased a lot after hearing Alyssa. "You'll just be somewhere close and listen to our conversation. If you sense any impending danger, you will call for backup," Alyssa said. "Oh, okay. Who do I call, though?" Amy asked again. She couldn't call just anyone as Cindy was strong. She might overpower the person. "Call Beta Simon. He'll come if you tell him it's me," Alyssa answered, while Amy nodded in understanding. They were about to leave for Cindy's residence when Amy stopped like she had just remembered something. "I almost forgot. I wanted to give you something too, Amy said as she dipped her hands into her pocket. Alyssa stared quietly as she waited for Amy to bring out what she had mentioned. From her pockets, Amy put a small device and gave it to Alyssa. "What's this?" Alyssa asked as she stared at it inquisitively. "It's a voice recording device. I had it installed in Cindy's apartment since the day you came to me. It has recorded everything she has ever said in her apartment. I'm sure it would be useful for you," Amy answered. "How come I never thought of that?" "Thank you so much," Alyssa said happily. "Even though things will not go as planned today, at least she has an insurance. Let's go." Cindy's residence. Alyssa stared around when she reached Cindy's house. She scoffed when she saw the huge building. Ezekiel had gone all out to make sure she's comfortable here, but she was still greedy, trying to steal her position like it was a big title. She reminded herself not to be bitter, as she had a plan. She couldn't show any form of weakness, or Cindy was going to use it against her. She walked into the entrance and pushed the door open without knocking. In the living room, she saw Cindy staring out the large window with a cup of tea in her hand. When she noticed Alyssa's presence, she turned to face her. "Finally, you came. I've been expecting you," she said, her face beaming with a wide and devious smile. Alyssa didn't answer, but rather she walked further to the living room, close to where Cindy was standing. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Cindy suddenly asked as she turned back to face the window again. Now that she was free from Cindy's gaze, Alyssa took that chance to turn on the recording device that was on her and positioned it well in her pockets so it could record their conversation well. The vast land, the people, the power. Cindy paused before turning back to face Alyssa again. "Soon enough, it will all be mine," she said as she cackled evilly. "And what makes you think Ezekiel would let you take over?" Alyssa asked as she folded her hands underneath her boobs, her lips twitching in amusement. It was not the reaction Cindy expected, but she kept her cool. "Because I'm the better option," Cindy replied. "Who's lying to you?" "What?" "If you were a better candidate, you wouldn't have had to go through all of the stress you did. 5 years ago, you told me Ezekiel plans to marry you after my voice was healed. That was a lie because he still doesn't want you till this day," Alyssa said as she eyed Cindy from head to toe. "I admit it, I lied that day and you were so stupid to fall for it," Cindy mocked in a malicious tone. "Yes, I was stupid then. I foolishly fell for your lies, but guess what? You were with him for 5 years, but nothing could come out of your time together. After everything, he still searched for me and brought me back to the pack." Cindy's eyes held pain and anger, as Alyssa's words were true. She had been with Ezekiel for the whole of those 5 years, but his heart was never with her. "But I was able to get pregnant for him," Cindy uttered. Even though Alyssa was right, she would never let her get to her nor win. "Where's the baby now?" Cindy stilled upon hearing Alyssa's mocking words. "What did you just say?" she asked in anger. Alyssa smirked and then catwalked slowly towards her. "Well, you claimed you were impregnated by Ezekiel. Where's the child now?" she asked again as she stared at Cindy's flat tummy. "Have you forgotten already that you and your bastard son caused my miscarriage?" Cindy yelled out in anger. Hearing Cindy call her son a bastard enraged Alyssa, but she kept her cool. She was here to spite Cindy and not the other way round. Instead, she busted into a fit laughter. Cindy couldn't help but notice that any time she mentioned her miscarriage, Alyssa was always laughing. She was mocking her to her face. "You think it's funny?" Cindy asked angrily. Alyssa immediately stopped laughing and stared at Cindy coldly. "It was funny when an abortion was forced on me, right?" she asked her. Her voice was void of any emotions. Cindy, who was initially scared because of her instant change in expression, laughed out. "Oh, that? How did it feel to have your baby ripped out of your body by the one person you loved?" Cindy asked with a small snicker. "And how did it feel to be ignored, even after having a miscarriage?" Alyssa asked back, the cold look instantly disappearing from her face. Cindy's voice was stuck in her throat. Alyssa was getting to her. She couldn't let that happen. She was going to win at all cost. "Mock me all you want, but I'll still take your position just like I promised," Cindy said, reminding her of their last conversation. "How? By bribing and threatening the Omegas?" Alyssa asked her. Her face went pale immediately. Alyssa knew how she was able to get to the Omegas. "You knew?" she croaked out. "Why not? You were so obvious. I never knew you were this sloppy." Alyssa mocked. Cindy scoffed in anger. "Say whatever you want to, because at the end of the day, I'll win. Everyone will see your true colors, and you'll have no choice but to leave the pack with your son," she said, in a rather confident tone. Alyssa stared at her deep in the eyes, and behind her arrogant and confident facade, she noticed how unstable Cindy was. She still had fear in her, fear of being caught by Ezekiel, and her plan not being successful. She was reacting the way Alyssa expected, and Alyssa wasted no time in grabbing the opportunity. "You couldn't even keep your child, and you think you can compete with me?" Alyssa asked in a mocking tone. Hearing her words, Cindy chucked coldly. "You see, that's where you are wrong. I never had a miscarriage. Hell, I never even got pregnant in the first place. It was all a plan. I wanted Ezekiel to despise your stupid son forever and ensure you and your son would never have a place in this pack." Cindy spat without thinking. When she realized what had just happened, her eyes dilated in shock. What was even more baffling was the look on Alyssa's face. She wasn't surprised at all. Instead, she had a wide smirk on her face. It made Cindy realize that Alyssa had always known, and now that she had confessed by herself, Alyssa had gotten her. Her surprise immediately switched to anger. She couldn't let Alyssa spill it to anyone else. She had to eliminate her. "You were stupid to come here alone," she said to Alyssa as she transformed into her full wolf form. She lunged at Alyssa, but Alyssa didn't feel any form of fear. Though she had no time to transform, she still fought back. Before Cindy could deep her fangs in her neck, she grabbed Cindy and sent her flying across the room. Cindy landed on the huge glass table, shattering it immediately. Cindy ignored the searing pain and lunged at her again, only to be tackled down by another wolf, much larger and fiercer than she was. She tried to fight back, but she was slammed away. The force in which she had been hit was enough to knock her out. Alyssa stared at the black-colored wolf in front of her. She recognized the red eyes immediately. It was Ezekiel. The next day, in a large hall, which was known as the pack's courtroom, a few elders sat facing a long table. Opposite them were other chairs where the audience that had come to watch the trial sat. Ezekiel and Alyssa sat next to each other. Sheila, Simon, Emma, and many others were also there. The air in the room was thick. There weren't any smiles on anyone's faces. Today was the judgment day for Cindy. The perpetrator in question was brought in by the guards. It took just one day for the once precious and high-born Cindy to look worse than a beggar. She still had injuries from her encounter with Alyssa, and her wolf had also been injured during her fight with Ezekiel. It was taking longer for it to heal her. Her lips were chapped, and her once pale skin had red marks on them. Her clothes were torn at some parts, revealing her slim figure. Her hair was scattered like she or someone else had been pulling on them. Who knew the once great Cindy would be kneeling and facing trial for her wrongdoings? It came as a shock to everyone. She was Ezekiel's favorite, but even he had abandoned her. Her eyes were dark, and they still had that murder intent in them, as she stared at Alyssa, who was close to her beloved. She wished she could finish what she started there, but she had been chained down, and worst of all, her wolf was still nursing its wounds. Since everyone was around, the trial started immediately. Since Alyssa was the center of it all, she made sure to provide all evidence that would be enough to implicate Cindy. She played the recording Amy had given her first. Loud gasps filled the room when they heard how she was talking to her numerous boyfriends on the phone. From the conversation, they could easily tell she had a special relationship with them. The hall turned into a much louder uproar when they heard about her confession to Alyssa, how she faked a pregnancy and pinned the miscarriage on Aiden. No one there expected the righteous Cindy would engage in such dubious acts. Like sharing her bad with many other wolves wasn't enough, she fooled everyone and planned to pin an unforgivable crime on a child. Ezekiel felt a huge lump in his throat as he listened to the recording. The woman he had been doting on endlessly and pouring all of his love and attention on didn't feel the same way for him once. Because of her, he had neglected his mate and son. He did a lot unforgivable things to his family just to please her. And what did he get in return? just betrayal and more scheming. Why would you do such a thing? Why would you lie to everyone that you were pregnant, and worse, you faked miscarriage? Sheila questioned Cindy in a stern tone. Cindy stared at the woman and then she burst out into an hysterical laughter. Her loud voice echoed the large hall, causing more murmurs to fill the room. All of a sudden, she stopped laughing and turned to face Ezekiel. "None one here can understand the love I have for you, Ezekiel, not even your so-called mate," she yelled at the top of her voice while eyeing Alyssa maliciously. "You claimed to love him, but you were busy sharing your bed with every single wolf in the pack, acting like the pack's whore." Sheila lashed out, and everyone in the hall laughed out with her hands pointed at her in mockery. Cindy's eyes grew darker as she heard them laugh their hearts out. Her mind was crowded with fury. How dare they? How dare these low lives make mockery of me? She thought within herself as her eyes moved round the whole hall. Everyone's mouths were opened wide, not fearing what she might do to them. Why would they fear when the great Cindy was chained up like an animal? Just then, Lily walked into the courtroom with a suitcase in her hands. After collecting it, Alyssa walked towards where the elders sat and dropped it on the table. Since more evidence had been brought, they had to continue the trial, so one of the elders hit the table severally to maintain decorum. The people laughing immediately shut their mouth out of fear of being sent out of the court. Another one of the elders brought out the files from the suitcase, and they shared it amongst themselves. It contained evidences which included forged medical records and testimonies from bribed doctors. It also contained evidence of Cindy's wayward lifestyle. Surveillance cameras at hotels, motels, and even brothels captured her with different wolves. Their hands were intertwined, and they acted all lovey-dovey with each other, which made everyone believe they all had deeper relationships with Cindy. Ezekiel immediately recognized one of the men that was with her in an hotel as the one who constantly treated her whenever she had issues with her health. All evidence that was presented showed the undeniable truth: Cindy was never pregnant, and neither was she ever pure. Ezekiel's breath stiffened as more evidences poured out. He stared at Cindy, hatred deeply imprinted in his eyes before turning to stare at Alyssa. His eyes softened, and the heavy weight of guilt weighed on him. He recalled his hurtful words to Alyssa that day at the hospital. "If you had been a better mother, if you had done a better job in raising him, he wouldn't have grown up to be such a spoilt brat." Those words and Alyssa's reaction replayed over and over again in his head. His son, he couldn't forget how he treated Aiden like a criminal. He didn't want to listen to what the boy had to say, and Cindy wasn't even pregnant in the first place. "What have I done?" he thought to himself. He stood up shakily from where he sat. His mouth felt heavy as he talked. At that moment, he was too ashamed to be called an alpha. "I was also deceived by Cindy. I trusted all her words and neglected my own family, the only people that actually deserved my love. Even when she was causing havoc and harm to them, I acknowledged and ignored it." He admitted, his voice filled with guilt. He paused. He knew the words to say, but his throat felt too heavy to voice them out. He took in a deep breath and let out a sigh. He moved to the front a bit and turned back to face everyone sitting in the hall. Apart from the normal pack members that had come to watch, the rest of them were Cindy's victims, and they consisted mainly of Omegas. They had all come to watch Cindy suffer the same way they did in her hands. Ezekiel moved his eyes towards them. His expression was down and filled with a lot of emotions, unlike the frigid one he usually wears. "I'm so sorry for the pains my negligence had caused. All these would have been prevented if I had been a better leader to you all. Please forgive me." He bowed his head to them. The Omega's mouth opened in shock, and they bowed immediately. It was a taboo to have their alpha bow to them since they were the lowest in the pack. Ezekiel had never been one to apologize to anyone, and worst, he had his head bowed to the lowest of the lowest in the pack. Ezekiel's mother stood in shock and anger as she watched her son, the alpha bow to Omegas. She was embarrassed with the way he was acting, but she said nothing. Ezekiel hardly ever listened to her since the day he brought Alyssa and her son back, and she was sure he wasn't going to listen to her now. The only thing she could do was sit quietly while seething in anger. Ezekiel lifted his head up and then turned to face Alyssa. He got down on his knees. His eyes were teary, but they never left hers. I know it would take a long while for you to forgive me for the harm I caused you and our son, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Just give me a chance so we all can start anew as one happy family. He pleaded. Alyssa's gaze was icy as she stared at him. She knew he wasn't going to stand up, and the trial wasn't even over yet. She had to know what they were going to do to Cindy before she even considers anything related to Ezekiel. She walked towards him. Bent to his level, she held his hands and pulled him up to his feet. Ezekiel's eyes held hope. What she did just now meant she had considered his apology. Even though she didn't utter a word, he still had hope that she would remain with him. After deliberating amongst themselves, the elders announced their judgment. Cindy Whitlock will be stripped off her title as the former Beta's daughter for the shame she has brought to her family, and she will be expelled forever from the pack. Loud screams echoed in the hall after the verdict was given. It was finally over. The witch will be thrown out of the pack. Amy, who was sitting somewhere at the back, couldn't control her wide smiles. She was free. She was finally free from Cindy's evil clutches. The guards around walked towards Cindy and pulled her up from where she knelt. As they dragged her with them, her loud voice echoed in the hall. Laugh and jubilate all you want for now, but don't you dare think it's over. I'll be back one day, and when I do return, I'll make you all regret for what you did to me today, she said as she let out an hysterical laughter. I'll be back for you all. Her voice went distant as the guards dragged her away. After she had left, Ezekiel turned to face Alyssa and pulled her into a tight embrace. I'm so sorry for everything I did, for the humiliation I made you pass through, for ignoring your feelings and turning my back on you when you need me the most. Ezekiel apologized again and again. He knew no amount of apology could change all that had happened. He just hoped that Alyssa would know how sincere he was with her and how willing he was to start anew with her and their son. All that happened here today had taught me an invaluable lesson. I never should have doubted you and Aiden. I should have listened to what you told me and investigated myself instead of jumping into conclusions. He whispered. Though his sincerity touched her, Alyssa had already made up her mind. She was never going to get back with him. The damage he had caused her and Burr's son was too much for them to go back to the way they used to be. The only reason she was close to him these past few days was to expose Cindy, and now that it had happened, she and Ezekiel no longer have any relationship with each other anymore. She pulled out of his hold and wanted to say something when Ezekiel received a mind link. It was the Gamma Captain. Alpha, we have a visitor, the captain announced. Who's it? She's a Luna from another pack, and she introduced herself as Melissa. Ezekiel stared at Alyssa and then let out a small sigh. Well, his talk with Alyssa would have to wait. He turned back his attention to the Gamma Captain before giving an order. Let her in, he said, and then he disconnected from the mind link. A few moments later, Melissa appeared in the hall, a few guards escorting her. When Alyssa saw her, her eyes widened in surprise as she immediately recognized her. Melissa was the same woman that had constantly visited her bakery, but after her big fight with Ezekiel, she didn't see her any inquiry as she rarely left for the bakery. With the way the pack's guards were escorting her, she knew that this woman was no ordinary wolf. Alyssa, this is Melissa, the Luna of Winter Ridge Band Pack, and Melissa, this is Alyssa, my mate and the Luna of Moonstone Keepers Pack, Ezekiel introduced. Both women had their mouths opened wide upon hearing Ezekiel's words. You are a Luna? You are the Luna of this pack? The both of them asked in unison. Their disbelief was very evident. Alyssa had always known her to be very wealthy because of the way she was dressed. What she didn't expect was the woman to hold such high status. She couldn't believe she had been conversing with a Luna all along. But Melissa didn't behave like she was one. Even though she had this luxurious aura, she didn't act like a pack's royalty. She was calm, she wasn't prideful, and she conversed with others like she has known them for a long time. Maybe being around Ezekiel and his family had made me think differently about wolf royals. Not every Alpha and Luna might act like them, she thought to herself as she gave Ezekiel a short glance. Wait, you both know each other? It was Ezekiel's turn to ask. Yes, I've frequently visited the bakery she works at. Melissa answered. I never expected an highly worshipped Luna would be working at a bakery, Melissa uttered, making an embarrassed look appear on Ezekiel's face. My mom doesn't work at the bakery, she owns it. Aiden, who had been silent all through, uttered. Melissa was even more surprised. You have a son? Yes, we do. Ezekiel answered before Alyssa could say anything. He's handsome. Melissa praised as she stared at little Aiden. After their exchange of pleasantries, Alyssa felt it was time for her to leave, as she didn't want to spend any more time with Ezekiel. She took Aiden's hand and was about to leave when, Where are you going? Ezekiel asked as he discreetly held her hand. To my room, Alyssa answered curtly. But we have a visitor. You have a visitor, so you should attend to her yourself, Alyssa corrected him. Ezekiel sighed and released his hold on her hand before casually placing them on her shoulder. Alyssa shuddered at his touch, but he didn't seem to notice. Have you forgotten already that you are the Luna? He asked. Have you forgotten what I said the day I arrived here? She asked back as she tried to pry his palm from her shoulder, but he held her still. I don't care about whatever you might have said. You are my mate and therefore the Luna, so it's your job to join me at occasions like this, said Ezekiel. Alyssa wanted to decline. Staying would only make Ezekiel think she was going to get back with him, but the look in his eyes, that hopeful look, got to her and weakened her resolve. She let out a frustrated sigh and then gave in to his request. She turned back to face Melissa, who had been watching their interactions with a small smile on her face. Let's go somewhere else. This place isn't suitable to welcome our esteemed guest. Alyssa, as she led Melissa out of the courtroom. Ezekiel smiled happily as they left. Thankfully, she didn't make things hard for him. He ordered one of the servants around to take Aiden to the courtyard to play with other cubs before joining Alyssa. They were currently seated round a table in Ezekiel's private garden. Some servants came and placed refreshments on the table before leaving. Melissa then went ahead to announce the reason she came to the family pack. I would like to cooperate with your pack. The discussion went on, and when they were done, Melissa expressed her desire to tour around the pack and that she also wanted Alyssa to be her tour guide. All right then, Ezekiel said, immediately agreeing to her request. Alyssa didn't complain as she also wanted to do some catching up with Melissa. Before they left, she asked for Aiden. She had been so busy these past few days that she had forgotten about how much Aiden wanted to tour the family house too. Since she was acting as a tour guide today, she might as well take her son with her. As they toured around the large family house, they crossed paths the wolves around, and those people wouldn't stop commenting about how much Alyssa and Melissa looked alike. Every single person they passed said the same words. Their striking resemblance is uncanny. They look like mother and daughter. Alyssa was confused. She stared endlessly at Melissa, but she couldn't see any resemblance. Alyssa decided to ignore them. They liked to say things that didn't make sense. Since they had been engulfed with silence, Alyssa decided to start up a conversation with Melissa. How come you never mentioned you were a Luna? She asked her. Melissa chuckled a little before asking back. If I did tell you, would you have been comfortable with me? Alyssa didn't answer. Her question made sense. If she knew Melissa was a Luna, she would have conversed with her with more respect. Besides, I didn't want to announce my presence at that time. I just wanted to enjoy my stay at the pack first, Melissa explained. And what do you think about our little pack? Is it to your liking? Alyssa joked, and the two women burst out laughing. Even though Aiden was with them, he didn't utter any word, as he knew better than to involve himself when his mother was talking to another adult. He just kept feeding his eyes with the scenery around him. As they continued conversing amongst themselves, Alyssa couldn't help but notice that Melissa was very knowledgeable. It made her admire the woman more. It also made her think about her necklace. Melissa had once told her she had traveled round different packs for business. Maybe she would know something about her necklace. Since she found out about the necklace, she had always carried it around out of fear of losing it. It was the only clue she had about her roots. Today, she didn't put it on. Rather, she kept it in her pocket. She dipped her hand into her pocket and was about to pull out the necklace to show Melissa when she heard her phone ringing. It was Lily, so she excused herself from Melissa and Aiden before answering it. "Amy has been sent abroad as per your request," Lily announced the moment Alyssa answered the call. "Really? Thank you so much. I'm really grateful to you," Alyssa thanked profusely. "It's fine, though. You're my friend," Lily answered. "You've helped me so much these past days, and I feel the need to pay you back. Ask me for anything, and I'll do my best to grant it when I return from the family house," Alyssa said. "Anything you give me will be appreciated," Lily answered. "What about me? What do I receive after all the help I've rendered?" Alyssa heard a man's voice from Lily's end of the call. "What?" Lily uttered with a chuckle. "I have also helped you, so I need to be shown some gratitude," the guy said again. Before Alyssa could ask who it was, she heard kissing sounds and soft moans from Lily's side, so she quickly ended the call. Her mind wandered to what might be happening there, and heat unconsciously crept to her face. Aiden, who had been silent all through, walked up to his mother and gently tugged on her clothes, thereby turning her attention to him. Filled with curiosity, "Why is your face red, Mommy?" he asked innocently. Filled with curiosity, "Why is your face red, Mommy?" he asked innocently. Alyssa didn't know how to answer her son's question. How was she going to tell a little boy what she had heard when she was talking to his aunt? But with the look on Aiden's face, she knew he wasn't going to let it go easily. She just had to come up with an excuse so he would stop asking questions. Just then, an Omega servant walked up to them. "Luna, Madame." She greeted both Alyssa and Melissa with a respectful bow. "The dinner is ready," she notified. "All right, we'll follow behind," Alyssa said to the Omega before dismissing her. The servant had come at the right time because she was able to divert Aiden's attention when she mentioned dinner. Alyssa let out a small sigh of relief as she didn't have to lie to Aiden anymore. Then she followed Aiden and Melissa back to the family house. At the dinner table. As per Ezekiel's request, the dinner took place at the same garden he, Alyssa, and Melissa had their discussion earlier that day. It was the perfect place to have dinner as the night's breeze made the atmosphere more calm. The large dinner table was filled to the brim with all sorts of delicacies, even though it was just 4 people eating. Those 4 people consisted of Ezekiel, Alyssa, Melissa, and Aiden. Sheila and Emma had never liked sharing the dining table with Alyssa because they looked down on her, so Alyssa didn't really care much about their disappearance that day. But for Sheila and Emma, they were too embarrassed to show face in front of Alyssa. They were ashamed because after looking down on Alyssa and her son, the person they always supported to take Alyssa's spot was not even worth it despite her status. Melissa was quiet all through the dinner as her eyes were mainly on Alyssa and Ezekiel. She couldn't help but notice how Ezekiel kept trying to get Alyssa's attention while she kept on giving him the cold shoulder. Earlier, he practically had to beg her to her job as Luna. It made her realize that their relationship may not be as rosy as she had thought. After watching for a while, she decided to excuse herself. Maybe it would be less awkward if she, an outsider, wasn't there. "Thank you so much for the food," she thanked as she stood up from her seat after wiping her hands and mouth with a tissue. "You're leaving?" Alyssa asked in surprise as she stood up too. "Today's has been really hectic. I just want to retire for the night," Melissa explained. "Okay, a guest room has been prepared for you already. She'll guide you there," Ezekiel asked as he called out to a servant that was standing a few feet away from them. "This way, madam," the servant said as she led the way to Melissa's room. "Good night and enjoy your dinner," she said, earning a smile from all 3 of them and a small wave from Aiden before she left with the servant. Alyssa sat back on her seat and then continued eating. Since it was just 3 of them left, Ezekiel tried harder to get Alyssa's attention. First, he helped her add some side dishes to her food when he noticed her reaching for it. "Thank you," Alyssa whispered before she continued eating. Ezekiel smiled softly. He was elated by her small words of gratitude. "So I heard you gave Melissa a tour to the PAC's training ground." Ezekiel decided to start up a conversation this time. Alyssa hummed a reply. "So how was their performance?" he asked her. "It was okay," Alyssa answered briefly as she took a sip of the water in her cup. Then she turned her attention to Aiden to prevent Ezekiel from asking any more questions. "I know he has wronged you greatly, but don't you think you're going too far? He is already paying for his sins. Don't be so cold to him," her wolf advised. "What I am doing to him now is way lesser than the pains I passed through in his hands. He needs to suffer too, because I can't forgive him so easily, like everything that happened never did." Alyssa answered her wolf, shutting her up. The dinner ended with Alyssa giving Ezekiel a cold shoulder and Aiden being in his own little world, making Ezekiel seem like a third wheel. Alyssa stood up and wanted to leave with Aiden, but Ezekiel held her back. "I have something to tell you," he said. At that moment, Alyssa felt Aiden tug on her clothes. His eyes were drowsy as he asked, "Mommy, when are we going back? I'm feeling sleepy," he complained. Noticing this, Simon immediately walked towards the table and took Aiden before Alyssa could. "I'll put him to bed," he said, and left immediately. Since Alyssa had no more excuse, she had no choice but to stay, so she sat back on the chair without a complaint. Ezekiel didn't say one word despite saying he wanted to tell her something. Alyssa decided to ask, but before the question could leave her mouth, she heard loud sounds, like an explosion. It was coming from the sky, so she looked up only to see fireworks, beautifully designed fireworks erupting. Her eyes widened in admiration as she watched the fireworks. "It's so beautiful." Those words left her mouth unconsciously. Ezekiel turned to face her. He didn't say a word, but his eyes fed on the look of admiration on her face. It made him happy to see she loved it. The fireworks showed off the words he couldn't convey with his mouth, his unspoken desires. The last two lines were more heart-gripping. "I'm so sorry for the pains I caused you, Alyssa. I love you so much," it read. Alyssa was stunned, more by the last sentence. He was confessing his love to her. Ezekiel, of all people, just told her that he loved her. "Isn't this enough to show you that he is sincere? Let go of his wrongdoings and forgive him already, so you both can start a happier life together," her wolf urged her. Ezekiel's confession and her wolf's words swayed her. She had always wanted him to say those words to her, and after years of waiting, he finally did. Ezekiel held her hand in his and pulled her up with him. She didn't pull away and just kept staring at him like she was in a daze. "Alyssa," he called out softly as he placed her cheeks in an affectionate manner. "I love you," he whispered, and then pressed his lips on hers. Alyssa, on the other hand, didn't reject the kiss. Rather, she kissed him back earlier that day. Alyssa's behavior with Ezekiel made it all clear to him. She had an ulterior motive when she suddenly started treating him better days ago. He knew she only got close to him to make Cindy jealous, and he didn't care. He wanted Alyssa closer to him. He had made a lot of mistakes, and he was willing to be used by his mate. He also hoped that Cindy would move further away from him once she sees he is happy with his family. He never expected she would attack Alyssa, but thankfully, he arrived on time before she could do any damage on his mate. The outcome of the trial had made him satisfied about his decision to be used by Alyssa. He was able to indirectly help to reveal the truth and all of Cindy's plots. Now that Cindy has been sent out of the pack, Alyssa had started ignoring him again. So, to make her forgive him, or maybe just see him in a different light, he decided to give her a surprise. That was the reason he readily agreed when Melissa asked for Alyssa to be her tour guide. Her absence would give him enough time to plan out everything. He had a great idea for the surprise. Fireworks. Alyssa had always loved fireworks, but this one was going to be different. He planned to show his hidden feelings and the ones Alyssa can't seem to see, no matter how much he showed it to her, on the fireworks. He had his beta hire the best pyrotechnician to help design the fireworks. Then, on a sheet of paper, he poured out his heart. A large sheet of paper was filed to the brim with heartfelt words and pleas for forgiveness. Then, the last sentence was what he needed to seal it off. He knew he had never told her those words before, and he was hoping now he was actually saying it, she would see him in a different light. The pyrotechnician helped him input the words and then set up the fireworks. Then he sent an Omega to go call them back for dinner. When Melissa left, he was glad as he didn't want a third party at the time he was supposed to confess. After Simon left with the sleepy Aiden, it remained just he had her like he had planned. He sent on order to one of the Omegas through MindLink, and the fireworks went off immediately. "I love you," he said to Alyssa before he pulled her in his arms and pressed a deep kiss on her lips. The butterflies in his belly fluttered when he felt her succumb to the kiss. She didn't push him away. Is that a good start for them? Just then, he felt Alyssa push his chest, prying his lips from hers. She stared at him for a short while before leaving without saying any word. Ezekiel watched silently as she practically ran out of his sight. Even though she pushed him away, he was still happy. She might be trying hard to show she didn't love him anymore, but he knew he had gotten to her, or maybe some part of her already, so he wasn't discouraged. She wavered, even though it was for a short while, but she still did, and that meant a lot to him. This was only just the beginning. A moment of romance wasn't enough to fully melt the ice in her heart. He needed to do more, to show her he was serious and to prove his sincerity to her. Earlier that day, Ezekiel really wanted Alyssa to see how sincere he was. He wanted to at least see her and maybe engage in a conversation or do something she might like. His plan went awry when he didn't see her come down to the dining hall to eat with Aiden, and Melissa. At first, he was sad thinking she was avoiding him on purpose until he heard Aiden say that his mother was still sleeping when Melissa asked him about her whereabouts. He wanted to check up on her, but he figured Alyssa would give him the cold shoulder, so he decided to do something else for her. He decided to prepare a meal for her. He figured the breakfast they had that morning would have gone cold by the time she wakes up, so he dismissed all the workers at the kitchen and got to work immediately. At first, he thought that cooking was a piece of cake, but the moment he held the knife, he realized that he wasn't that good at cooking. He had never visited the kitchen since the day he was born. He never had the time to, as he was busy preparing to be the next alpha of the pack. Even when he had limited time, his mother never allowed him go there or even see how the chefs did their magic. She always reminded him that it was the servant's job to be in the kitchen, and an alpha like him shouldn't be found there. Now he was regretting it. If only he hadn't listened to his mother then, he wouldn't be on such a mess. He couldn't even handle the basics of chopping a vegetable. Simon noticed him struggling and tried to help him, but Ezekiel rejected his help. He wanted to be the one to do it himself. Hopefully, Alyssa would appreciate his efforts. As he kept trying and failing to chop the vegetables, he noticed the pot on the stove was smoking. Startled, he accidentally cut his finger with the sharp knife using to chop the vegetables. He let out a soft groan as he stared at his bleeding finger. He ignored the pain and rushed to the burning pot. He turned off the stove and opened the already hot pot, forgetting to use a towel. He winced in pain when he felt the burning heat of the cover on his fingers. He immediately dropped it as he stared at his already red fingers. Why is everything not going as planned? He thought in frustration. Just then, amidst the thick smell of his sweat and the smell of the burning pot, he catches the sweet scent of his mate, Alyssa. His heart skipped a beat as the thought of her watching him at such an embarrassing time made him flustered. He wanted to surprise her, not for her to see him in such a clumsy state. "Alyssa?" He called out as he turned to face her with an embarrassed smile on his face. She coughed and fanned the air above her nose with her hand so the smoke in the kitchen wouldn't affect her. "What are you doing?" Alyssa asked in confusion as she walked into the kitchen while staring around the messy place. "Cooking," he answered. Alyssa stared at him and shook her head in disbelief. She walked past him to the windows leading outside, and then opened them to allow aeration in the kitchen. After that, she turned back to face him. Her hands were wrapped underneath her boobs as she cocked her brows. "Were you that hungry that you couldn't call someone to do it for you? See the mess you've created here," she said as her eyes roamed around the large kitchen. Ezekiel scratched the back of his head, his face burning crimson red. He was more than embarrassed. He had messed everything up by his inability to make a simple meal. "I was trying to cook for you," he answered in a shy tone. Alyssa's eyes widened upon hearing his words. "What?" "I didn't see you at the dining this morning. Then I found out you were still asleep. I figured you would be hungry when you wake up, so I decided to make a meal for you before then. Although it didn't go as planned," he muttered as he stared round the kitchen. His chest heaved. He was expecting a scold from Alyssa or an indifferent expression from her. Instead, he noticed a smile. She smiled at him. His heart fluttered as he watched her smile at his clumsy state. His plan didn't work, but she still didn't act cold towards him. "That's because, unlike you, she appreciates the thought," his wolf uttered. This was the first time she was smiling this bright at him since the day Cindy was expelled out of the pack. It was the little things he had to do just to see it. If he had known, as he was relishing in her gorgeous smile, her smile faded, the same way it had appeared in the first place. "Why weren't you careful then? You could have hurt yourself," she scolded in concern. Ezekiel almost laughed out. "That was a first. My fingers? I hurt my fingers earlier while cutting the veggies," he complained playfully. "Let me see." Alyssa said A. She pulled out his hand A of a sudden, catching him off guard. A small gasp left her mouth as she stared at the large cut on his finger. "Would you help me apply some medicine?" he asked. To his surprise, Alyssa readily agreed and pulled him with her out of the kitchen to her room where the first aid box was. His face was brimming with smiles as he followed behind her like a servant, following his master. Even though he wasn't able to do what he had initially planned to, he at least get to see her care for him, and that meant a lot. A few days later, the days that passed were the happiest for Ezekiel, because his relationship with Alyssa was slowly getting better than the time they first arrived to the family house. She treated him differently, and there was no sign of fakeness in her behavior towards him. Not like when she was only getting close to him to make Cindy jealous. Her public affection towards him reminded him of years ago when they had just gotten married. The way she acts towards him now was the same way she did then, and to think that it disgusted him then. Now he was happy with every little affection that she showed him. Since things were turning out well between he and Alyssa, he decided to amend the relationship he had with his son too. The boy still hated him. He had never for once missed the disappointed look in his eyes any time the little boy stares at him or the way he tries to avoid him every single time. He had fucked up really bad, and now it's time to rectify all of his mistakes. This time he didn't know what to do. His mistake now was much graver than the ones of before, so toys and gifts might not cut it. So he decided to ask for advice. The first person he went to was his beta. "I need you help," he said to Simon one day while they were both in his office. Simon was more than stunned upon hearing him. Ezekiel, of all people, had come to him for help. This Ezekiel was one that never listened to other, neither would he ever initiate a plea for help. What has gotten into him all of a sudden? Ezekiel's eyes held confusion and frustration, so he didn't even bother about the look on his beta's face. All that concerned him at that moment was getting on the good side of Aiden. "Can you shed some light on how to bond with a child, especially one like Aiden? I see the way you converse with him. You were able to get on his good side despite not knowing him for too long," he asked. "That's because I never got on his bad side in the first place," Simon said in his mind, but he didn't dare say it out loud. He knew better, as he didn't want to get punished by his alpha. Seeing Ezekiel's determination, he decided to be of help. "You don't really have to do a lot like get gifts and all that. You just have to engage in the things he loves doing or the ones he is having problems with," Simon answered. "And what's that?" Ezekiel asked again. Simon stared at Ezekiel in surprise when he asked that question. How would he, the boy's own father, not know what's going on in his son's life? He doesn't know his hobbies, neither did he know the issues he was facing at that moment. Simon swallowed down the words that were threatening to escape his mouth. It isn't like Ezekiel had been at home doing nothing. He knew firsthand how hectic the life of an alpha is. Since he is asking, maybe he is willing to learn about them now. Well, for now, he's having issues at the training ground. If you could just help him with his struggles, I think it would be a great start for you both, Simon suggested. Ezekiel nodded thoughtfully. He had thought it would be something difficult for him to help with. Knowing that it was just issues at the training ground put him at ease. Since he had passed through numerous hectic trainings from a young age, such an activity wouldn't be a problem for him. So he decided to teach his son some combat skills. Later that day, when Ezekiel got to the training ground, he realized his beta was right. Aiden was really bad at everything he did. Maybe it was because that was the first time he was doing it. Back at Grim Hunter's pack, he only attended classes at school and nothing more, as Alyssa didn't want to get him involved in his father's lifestyle. But when he saw his friends, the other cubs at the family house, practicing at the training ground, he decided to give it a go, but it wasn't as easy as they made it seem. He was a complete noob at it, but Alyssa was always there to encourage him whenever he made a mistake. That was the only reason he hadn't quit till now. It was the archery training session, but Aiden kept on missing the target every single time. His face held a great amount of frustration, but B didn't stop since his mother was watching him from afar. After watching him aim, shoot, and still miss the target numerous times, Ezekiel decided to butt in. He tried to help Aiden arrange the bow and arrow well, but the little boy moved away from him. He could accept anyone's help except for Ezekiel's. He stopped avoiding when Alyssa gave him an encouraging look. He sighed softly and let Ezekiel do what he wanted to. Ezekiel proceeded to help him arrange his bow and arrow well, and he also taught him how to aim well, so when he finally released the arrow, it hit the target at a perfect spot, earning a wide smile from his mother. His heart leapt with great joy. After so many failures, an intervention from Ezekiel was all it took for him to hit the target perfectly. He realized that Ezekiel was good at training and also a good teacher, so he made Ezekiel teach him other sessions he was having issues with. That was when Ezekiel realized that his son was more like him, in the stubborn aspect, though. Aiden's enthusiasm reminded him of when he was his age. He wanted to learn everything at once. Aiden's earnestness made him amused. He didn't know when his hand moved on its own and ruffled the boy's hair. When he realized what he was doing, he thought Aiden would move away, but to his surprise, he didn't. Alyssa was seated on a bench a few feet away from them, her soft gaze watching their interactions with each other. Things were finally getting better between them too, and she was more than happy about it. When the training was over, Ezekiel offered to take Aiden to his room, and Alyssa didn't refute. As he escorted the boy back, Aiden quietly said something. "I hope we can train together again tomorrow." His voice was low, but Ezekiel still heard it. Ezekiel felt his heart leap with joy. Even his wolf wasn't exempted. It howled happily from within. It was like Aiden knew what Ezekiel wanted to ask. His words brought tears to Ezekiel's eyes. Finally! He had been waiting for this day for a long time now. "I will gladly train with you," Ezekiel answered, not bothering to hide his happiness. To him, there was no need of trying to act all calm and collected with his son. He had to take his chance earnestly the moment the opportunity comes his way. And this was a great chance to finally earn his son's forgiveness, love, and respect. The interaction between father and son was enough to melt the ice in Alyssa's heart. Her son had been deprived of his father's affection for far too long. Ezekiel's mistake due to Cindy's manipulation was enough to drive both father and son apart. Now that the witch had been chased away, Aiden and his father had more time to themselves without any interruptions. No one was there to call Ezekiel out for help. He could finally bond with his family the way he wanted to, and that was enough to put a smile on Alyssa's face. Every night, whenever Aiden returns from the training ground, he never failed to narrate his adventure with his father. Since the first day they trained together, Ezekiel always made sure to be the one to take him to the training ground and bring him back. Because of his help, Aiden started to improve more during the training sessions, and Ezekiel also helped increase his enthusiasm to join other pups in training. Within a few days, he had gotten about 3 times better since the day he initially started, and Alyssa couldn't be more proud of him. Every time he returned from training, he always had something good to say about Ezekiel, a lot of raises to rain on him. To him, Ezekiel was a good teacher and listener. He was always patient with him, even though Aiden acted too stubborn or was too slow to learn, unlike the others. He never for once screamed at him whenever he made a mistake. His voice was always soft whenever he corrected him, and that only drove Aiden to want to do better, to be better than he was. Even Ezekiel wasn't left out. Whenever he had time to talk to Alyssa, he couldn't help but keep praising Aiden. He spared no details about what was going on at the training ground. He commented about how much of a fast learner Aiden was most of the time, how he never really had to scold the boy for his mistakes as he always learnt from them, how he always had the zeal that was driving him to do better. Both father and son had a lot of tales to tell, and all Alyssa could do was be the listener. Even though the story bored her or confused her at some point, she never stopped listening. Moments like that didn't come to her on a silver platter, so she had to cherish it as long as it lasted. All that mattered was that the bond between father and son was getting stronger. About 2 days later, Alyssa was at the garden where she normally spends her afternoons, reading when she realized that she had company. She looked up from the book she was reading and saw Melissa hovering over her. Realizing the woman wanted to sit next to her to probably engage in a conversation, she closed her book and moved a bit to create space for Melissa. She tapped on the space created and said, "Have a seat." Melissa wasted no time and took the seat she offered. "I hope I wasn't disturbing you?" she asked softly. "You weren't. I was about to stop reading anyway," Alyssa answered. She truly was about to stop reading and leave the garden as she didn't want to miss Aiden's session at the training ground. Melissa nodded her head and then turned to face the front. She let out a loud sigh as she and then lifted her eyes to stare at the sun, thereby squinting in the process as the sun was too bright for her eyes to handle. With the way she is acting, Alyssa could tell that what Melissa was about to say would be a bad news. "I'll be returning to the Northern Pack tomorrow." She dropped the bombshell. Alyssa whipped her head to face Melissa immediately. "What? Why so soon?" she questioned sadly. "Well, the collaboration with your pack has already been finalized. I can't stay for long as my pack is also waiting for me," Melissa answered. Alyssa understood her reason to leave, but she was still sad that she had to go. Over the past few days, she was able to form a tight bond with Melissa, and letting go didn't really seem easy for her. "I'm really going to miss you," Alyssa muttered with a sad pout. "Me too. I would love to see you at my pack one day, though. You can come visiting any time you want. My doors are always open for you," Melissa informed. "Since you're inviting me yourself, I can't decline the offer then. All I want is for to give me a tour around your pack too. I would love to see the place you rule." "Of course I'll give you a tour. You're really going to love my pack," Melissa answered. "Perfect. Now that's settled, I better start making your farewell dinner," Alyssa said as she stood up from where she sat. "Farewell dinner?" Melissa asked in confusion. "Yes, this is the last day you'll spend here, so I have to at least make you dinner." "But you don't have to," Melissa argued. "I'll see you in the evening," Alyssa said and disappeared out of the garden immediately before Melissa could stop her. At the dinner, Alyssa had initially planned to make the dinner a small one, just between Melissa and their little family, but Ezekiel had other plans. He set up a big party instead. He claimed that since she had come herself just to make a deal with them, the least he could do was to send her off with style. So currently they were at the ballroom with hundreds of guests around. Melissa, Alyssa, Ezekiel, and Aiden all sat around a different table. The mood in the hall as they wined and dined together was a pleasant one. Melissa's eyes didn't leave the family of three once. She had noticed that their relationship with each other had slowly improved over the past few days. It felt like what Alyssa told her before never even happened. Though she was angry and disappointed with Ezekiel, she was happy to see the bright smile on Alyssa's face as Ezekiel kept feeding her food like she was a baby. Despite being together for so long, they were acting like newly married couples. "Ah, I envy you both," she muttered with a sigh, gaining their attention. "What's there to envy?" Alyssa asked as her face burned crimson red. "Your affection towards one another reminds me of my own family," Melissa answered with a small smile. "You have a family?" Ezekiel asked in surprise, mostly because she had never mentioned it before. "Yes, I did have a family, yet we were once happy till I lost both my alpha mate and my daughter due to an accident," Melissa answered, her face filled with sorrow. For the past years, I've been traveling around different packs with hopes of finally finding my lost daughter, she added as she blinked her eyes to hold back the tears that were threatening to escape. Alyssa's words got stuck in her throat, as she didn't expect Melissa's story to be this sad. She had always worn a bright smile on her face, so it was hard to tell she had such an harrowing past. She was about to say something when Simon rushed in all of a sudden. His face showed great anxiety. "Alpha, there are some rogues creating issues at the border," he announced. Seeing Simon's panicked state, Ezekiel realized it might not be a simple rogue attack, so he decided to go handle it himself. As soon as he leapt, a commotion was heard in the large ballroom. Since she was the Luna, Alyssa decided to go check what was going on. All of a sudden, she was pushed from behind. She missed her steps and fell into the fountain close to where she was standing without warning. Without wasting a breath, Melissa jumped in to help her. Since she was a good swimmer and also a very strong Luna, she was able to pull Alyssa out of the water with her. Alyssa was on her knees, her head facing the ground as she coughed out water. The forward thrusts made her necklace slip out of her cloth. All of a sudden, she felt someone pull on it while it was still on her neck. It was Melissa. "Where did you get this?" Melissa asked in shock, her body trembling as she stared at the pattern on it. "It's mine." "Why?" Confusion was an understatement as to what Alyssa felt at that moment. Melissa's eyes only widened the more when she heard Alyssa's words. "It's yours?" She croaked out, her voice breaking as tears brimmed at the corner of her eyes. "What's wrong?" "You're her! You're my daughter!" she said. "Where did you get this?" Melissa asked in shock, her body trembling as she stared at the pattern on the necklace. Alyssa stopped coughing and looked up to stare at Melissa. The look in the woman's eyes confused her. She seemed shocked, confused, happy, and sad at the same time. What was going on? Alyssa wanted to ask so badly, but she had to see for herself first. Maybe then she would be able to fully grasp the situation. Her eyes moved to what Melissa was staring at and holding, and she saw it was her necklace. The same one Ezekiel had claimed would lead her to her roots. She had wanted to ask Melissa about it before, but with the looks of it, it seemed like Melissa knows something about the necklace. "It's mine." "Why?" Alyssa decided to answer. Confusion was an understatement as to what Alyssa felt at that moment. Melissa's eyes only widened the more when she heard Alyssa's words. "It's yours?" she croaked out, her voice breaking as tears brimmed at the corner of her eyes. "Okay, why is she about to cry?" Alyssa asked herself as she watched the woman quietly, not knowing whether to comfort her or ask more questions. After contemplating on what to do, she realized her curiosity was more than her need to comfort her, so she asked, "What's wrong?" Melissa's throat felt heavy, that she had never been so sure about anything in her life, but it all felt like a dream to her. After so many years of searching, she had been here all along. She couldn't hold back much longer. She yearned so much to be back with her daughter, to finally be able to call her one. The words left her mouth like she had been longing to say it for a long time. "You're her! You're my lost daughter," she said. Wait, what? Alyssa had never felt so confused in her entire life. Why was she suddenly claiming she was her lost daughter now? They've known each other for a long while, but she is only realizing she was the one now? Also, Alyssa's family had been wiped out. She had always been called a wolf without a pack. How come she had a mother now? It was so hard to believe Melissa's words. She pulled out of Melissa's hold and stood up. Melissa, realizing something was wrong, stood up with her. "You don't believe me?" she asked Alyssa. She couldn't easily recognize a doubtful look anywhere she sees it. That was how most people stared at her when she claimed her daughter was still alive. "It's just that what you just told me is so hard to believe. I don't know about your daughter, but there's no way my parents are still alive," Alyssa uttered. "Why would you say so?" Melissa asked her. "Because they were wiped off during a rogue attack. None of them, nor my former pack members, survived the attack." "Did you see it?" Melissa asked her. "No, but..." "Then how come you're so sure that they didn't survive it?" Melissa asked again. "Because that's what I was told." "Have you ever thought that maybe you were lied to?" Alyssa stared at Melissa silently, her words ringing in her mind. She had never considered that, and she never had any reason to. Ezekiel's father was the one who told her that her parents were killed at the rogue attack. He wouldn't lie to her since he had nothing to gain from it. Also, he treated her like a human being, unlike everyone else at this pack. He never saw her as an outsider, but as his own blood, so she never had any reason to doubt whatever he told her. "I was never lied to," Alyssa refuted in a confident tone. She trusted Ezekiel's father that much. "Then, how did you wind your having this necklace?" Melissa asked again as she touched the pendant on Alyssa's neck. "This." She looked down to stare at the necklace on her neck. "This is my family's heirloom left for me by Ezekiel's father," Alyssa answered. "And that's the same necklace with the same pendant I wore on my daughter before she got lost," Melissa added, reminding her about how she had lost her daughter in the accident. Alyssa stared at her in surprise. "How could you be so sure that this is it? You could be miss." "That pattern on the necklace is very unique to my pack, so I can recognize it anywhere I see it," Melissa answered, her lips quivering as she fought so hard not to break down. Alyssa's heart tightened in her chest as she stared at the woman who claims to be her mother. If Melissa's story was true, then she was never an orphan, nor was she an Omega. She had packmates, and her own mother was the Luna of the pack. It all felt like a dream come true for Alyssa, as she had always wanted to know about her family. Melissa's eyes were on Alyssa all through, as she went through different emotions, all in a short period of time. It reminded her of all she went through after she lost her family. 18 years ago, her whole world shattered after she lost her alpha mate and her daughter was stolen from her. Alyssa was her last family, her hope of going back to the way things used to be before, but she couldn't even find her daughter after years of searching. But she never gave up the search. Days turned into months and months turned into years, but she never gave up. As long as she never found her daughter's dead body, she was sure she was still alive. She went from one pack to another, searching for a girl that would be around her daughter's age, wearing that necklace, or even hoping to find a clue about where she was. Every time, she ended up getting disappointed, but that didn't discourage her. She was hopeful that she would find her daughter one day, but what she didn't imagine was that it would be at this pack. Now that the truth was out, it still felt like a daydream to Alyssa. All her life, she was made to believe she had no family. All it took was one necklace for her to finally find her place in the world. No wonder everyone said that they looked alike. She had initially thought it was a compliment because of Melissa's sophisticated look and poise. The truth left Alyssa both stunned, happy, and sad at the same time. She had been made to believe a lie by the one person she trusted the most. She was still glad that he left her necklace for her. Without it, her mother wouldn't have been able to find her. Melissa's years of longing reached its peak. She couldn't hold back much longer when her daughter was standing right in front of her, so she broke down. Tears fell freely from her eyes as she pulled Alyssa into a deep hug. Alyssa didn't pull away, nor did she hold back. She held Melissa tightly in her arms as tears poured out of her eyes, too. After so many tears of searching endlessly, they had finally been able to reconnect. None of the women held back their emotions. Neither did they let go of each other. Just then, Ezekiel rushed back into the hall, only to witness the emotional reunion. He hadn't been gone for long, and they were already crying in each other's arms. What's going on? When Ezekiel first arrived at the border, he found out that the problem with the rogues wasn't as severe as his beta had made it seem. He had thought that his immediate attention was needed to protect his pack. The guards at the border could have handled it themselves, so why did Simon make it sound like they were under attack by a large group of rogues? Since he was already there, he decided to just handle it. It didn't take that long for them to round up most of the rogues threatening them as the rest escaped. Since the issue had been taken care of, he was about to leave when he suddenly received a mind link from Simon. This time, he had something to report about the banquet. Since he was leaving, he made his beta stay to watch over his family while he was gone, just in case a problem arises. An incident just occurred. Alyssa had been pushed into the water. Simon broke out the news. Ezekiel's breath became labored when he heard the news. Alyssa was pushed into the water? How come? This was supposed to be a farewell banquet for Melissa. So how did something like this happen? Worse of all, Alyssa couldn't even swim. He rushed back immediately to the banquet, forgetting to ask how Alyssa was faring now. When he got back, he was met with a more surprising scene. It was something he never expected to see after hearing the news of Alyssa's accident. Alyssa and Melissa had their hands wrapped together, pulling their bodies into a deep hug as they sobbed sadly on each other's shoulders. What was going on? What had he missed? Then he noticed Alyssa's drenched clothes, making him realize that she had indeed fell into the water. Melissa's clothes were also wet, which meant that the woman had helped save his Luna. Now that they are both safe, why are they still crying like something really bad had happened? He had so many questions, but chose to let them cry their eyes out first before asking. That was his initial plan, till he noticed that Alyssa's wet gown was clinging too much to her body. It made her irresistible curve visible to everyone. On a normal day, he would have let it be because he loved seeing her that way. But today was different. She was at a ball, and a lot of eyes, lustful eyes from perverted male wolves, were on her. He didn't like such gaze. Alyssa's body was his to see and his alone. He quickly walked over to Alyssa and called out her name. Alyssa pulled away from the hug immediately and looked up to face him. He noticed how red her eyes were, making him realize that she had cried a lot. Was she that scared when she fell in the pool? Ezekiel felt his heart tightened. Why wasn't he here to protect his mate? He took a deep breath to steady his emotions. He could berate himself later. Now he needed to protect his mate from the weird glances she was receiving from every male at the ball. He quickly took off his suit jacket and wrapped it around her curvy body. "Let's go," he whispered to her and then pulled her with him. Luckily for him, Alyssa didn't refute and followed him silently till they got to her room. They entered the room together, and Ezekiel shut the door before turning to face Alyssa. He stared at her silently, blaming himself her accident. He still had the idea that Alyssa was in such a state because of the intense fear she had when she fell into the pool. When Alyssa noticed his intense stare, "What's wrong?" she asked innocently. "You need to change your outfit, else you'll catch a cold," he said to her as he moved his eyes away from her body. That was when Alyssa realized that her cloth had been drenched when she fell into the pool. She looked down only to see she was almost naked, as her gown was practically glued to her body. Is that the reason he covered her up and took her out of the ball? How come she didn't notice the state she was in? She turned away as her cheeks flushed in embarrassment. She ran into closet immediately, while Ezekiel waited for her patiently. When she emerged out of the closet, she was already putting on dried clothes. Ezekiel walked towards her without uttering a word and pulled her to sit in front of the mirror. He plugged in the hair dryer and helped her dry her wet hair. As he was drying her hair, he couldn't help but notice the happy look she had on. It was completely different from the expression she had when he first found her. "What's got you smiling this hard?" He couldn't help but ask. Alyssa wasted no time in explaining what had happened, how she found out that she was actually Melissa's long-lost daughter. Ezekiel's eyes dilated in shock. His hands that was holding the hairdryer was hanging midair. "I thought they all died after the rogue attack," he said. "I thought so too, but from all that happened today, I have reasons to believe that she's my mother," she answered as she held the necklace she was wearing in her hand. Both Ezekiel and his wolf felt joy for Alyssa upon hearing her words. She was finally able to find her family, and even better, she found out that they didn't die like she had been told. She wasn't an orphan, neither was she an Omega. Aiden would be really happy to find out he has another grandmother. Just then, they heard a knock on the door. Ezekiel went to check who it was. When he saw that it was Melissa, he let her in. She was also putting on a new set of clothes. "I'm sure Alyssa has filled you in on everything," she said when she noticed the warm atmosphere in the room. "Yes," Ezekiel replied. "Good. Then I guess you will agree to my request." "What request?" Ezekiel's breath stilled as he wanted for her reply. He feared she might say something he wouldn't like. "I would like to take my daughter and grandson back to my pack," she answered. "What?" It was just like Ezekiel had expected. "They can't leave with you. Why will I let you take my family away?" He disagreed immediately. "In case you've forgotten, they are my family too, and I have equal rights to take them with me," Melissa argued. "I still can't let you take them away. Such a big decision can't be made by you alone. We have to ask for their opinions too. I'm sure they won't agree to leave since they've lived here for so long." "All right then. Let's ask the both of them together. Whoever they agree to stay with will be the winner." Melissa deadpanned. "Sure, I won't go back on my words," Ezekiel assured. Since Aiden wasn't with them, Ezekiel ordered his beta to go search for him. Minutes later, Simon returned with distraught look, his face. His response made everyone go into panic immediately. "I couldn't find Aiden anywhere. He is missing. Somewhere unknown." Cindy stared at him while he was in an unconscious state. She had a calm look on, unlike the usual evil and disgusted looks she used on him before. He was sleeping peacefully because of the drug she had used on him because he was crying too loud. She walked over to where he laid and sat next to him. She raised her right hand and gently brushed her fingers on his face. She didn't stop there. She stroked his face continuously and watched as he slept like the baby he was. Her calm expression didn't last for a while, as a gloating look quickly appeared on her face when she recalled how smooth her plan was. So smooth that no one realized when the boy had been taken. Flashback. Just like Cindy had promised, she wasn't going to sit back and let Ezekiel enjoy with his family. He had humiliated her. He made her look like a fool, as she kept waiting for him to love her back for years. All the promises he made to her when they were younger, he never fulfilled any of them. After her expulsion, she spent her days in isolation, planning the perfect way to get back at Ezekiel for what he did to her. She was willing to do anything, to go through any lengths to make Ezekiel and Alyssa suffer. Then, the perfect idea came to her. There was one thing the lovebirds cherished the most, and that was Aiden. They should have never messed with someone like her that had nothing to lose when she decides to exert vengeance. They should have never crossed her, and now they'll have to pay dearly. The plan was simple. Kidnap the boy while they weren't watching. The plan was only simple when being said, but doing it will take a lot of work and bravery, except when the doer was Cindy. Cindy has always been cunning, reasons she was able to fool Ezekiel for years. He and Alyssa had really underestimated her. She let her guard once, and Alyssa was able to win. Never again. This time, she was going to take things slow and easy. No matter how long it took or how hard it was going to be, all that mattered to her was seeing the pain and suffering in both Alyssa's and Ezekiel's faces. So she got to work. She needed a distraction, and she found one immediately. She first met with one of her lovers. After a passionate time together and some bundles of cash she had saved up while being Ezekiel's lover, her lover agreed to send some of his rogue friends to the pack's border. Cindy knew what would happen if they were apprehended, but sacrifices had to be made so her plan could go smoothly. Besides, she had never cared for anyone except herself. Just like she had planned, a small commotion at the border was all it took to get Ezekiel's attention, and he left his precious family vulnerable. Back at the ball, Alyssa and an unknown woman were still with Aiden. She needed them to be separated, so she planned with some of her people at the pack to start up a chaos. Since Alyssa was the Luna, she would definitely want to step up and end it. Just like she had expected, Alyssa did step up, but before she could get to where the issue was coming from, one of Cindy's people pushed her into the large fountain. Cindy knew Alyssa couldn't swim, so while she battled to stay at the surface of the water, the woman with them rushed to save her from drowning, leaving Aiden on his own. Everyone in the hall were in a state of panic, as all of their eyes were mainly on the two women in the fountain, while Cindy's cohorts took that as the perfect chance to escape with the boy. Kidnapping Aiden became the easiest and most stressless job Cindy had ever done. Present. As Cindy thought about it, she laughed out again. Ezekiel boasted so much about how his family was his life and what he would do to protect them, but he wasn't even there when his son was taken. There is nothing he can do by the people he loves, except causing them harm. Anyway, isn't that typical of Ezekiel? He claims to love his son so much, but he wasn't even there to protect him. He was never even there in most orts of the boy's life. so today's issue wasn't shocking. He would rather chase away rogues for the sake of the pack than protect his own family. Same way he chose to uphold his promise to a dead man rather than the living. Talk about misplaced priorities. Cindy made a small tut sound with her tongue then. She shook her head briefly. Ezekiel can never be the family man he wishes to be, she thought to herself. She looked down to face the boy. Her hand was still stroking his face. As he slept peacefully, he reminded her of Ezekiel when they were much younger. Back then, she was the one he loved the most. Their love was the most beautiful and the envy of other girls at the pack. She recalled how he would take care of her passionately any time she got hurt. He never liked seeing her in pain. He always told her she was prettier whenever she had a bright smile on. Ezekiel's gentleness had always been reserved for her alone. He would rather suffer than see her cry. He had never broken any promises he made to her, not until Alyssa came in the picture. Then, none of them cared if they were mates or not, as they had already promised to tie the knot when Ezekiel becomes alpha. He has been the alpha for years now, and he never once fulfilled the promise he made to her. Neither did he give her at least a glimmer of hope that the time they spent together wouldn't be for nothing. He loved her, and she loved him, but now all she felt was pain and anger in her heart. She halted her soft strokes on Aiden's face and then stood up on her feet. She could already imagine the commotion happening at the pack right now. Their precious heir is missing. She badly wanted to see the expression on their face when they find out she took Aiden. They thought expelling her from the pack would be the end of their suffering, but it was just the beginning. She promised she was going to make them pay for what they did to her, and nothing will stop her from upholding that promise. Even if she loses her life in the process, she would die with a smile as long as she wipes away Alyssa's and Ezekiel's happiness forever. She stared at the sleeping boy again, a devious smirk appearing on her lips. "Let my revenge begin," she said to no one in particular. She was determined to make Ezekiel taste the pain of losing someone he loved and suffer in regret for the rest of his life. His response made everyone go into panic immediately. "I couldn't find Aiden anywhere. He is missing." Alyssa felt like her world had gone still the moment she heard those words. Aiden is missing. Her son is missing. No. She couldn't believe it. There was no way Aiden could just disappear. He was with her. He was right there with her at the ball. He must have gone to play with his friends as always. That was his usual routine. With that thought in mind, Alyssa rushed out of the room and met with every one of the pups at the ball, but none of them knew where he was. They claimed they didn't see him after she fell in the fountain. Alyssa still didn't believe what she was hearing, so she decided to check the pack's playground. Hopefully he might be there with the Omega's pups. When she got there, she was more than disappointed. Everyone there also claimed they had never seen Aiden, since he left to prepare for the ball earlier. The news made Alyssa's mind run wild with different thoughts, questions as to where her son was. There were a lot for chatters at the background of where she was, but she didn't seem to be listening. Aiden, her baby. He's gone, but how? How come he's gone? No, I can't lose hope yet. I need to find him, Alyssa said to herself with a determined look on her face. Her determined look immediately dissolved the moment she recalled she had already searched everywhere he might possibly be. What do I do now? How do I fund you my baby? She asked herself as she combed her hand through her hair with a frustrated look on. Just then, she got an idea. Surveillance cameras, she said out loud. What? Melissa asked as she turned to face her. The pack must have surveillance cameras everywhere, right? She asked. Yes, they do, Ezekiel answered this time. Then maybe we can find out where Aiden went. Melissa interrupted. Ezekiel shared a short glance with Simon and he left immediately. Alyssa wanted to follow, but Ezekiel stopped her. Simon will find out where he is, so you don't have to worry, he assured. Alyssa decided to take his word for it, so she sat on the bed. As she waited patiently for Simon to return, she prayed fervently within herself that he had just left to play somewhere in the pack. Within a few minutes, Simon returned. Alyssa stood up with a hopeful look on her face, but it disappeared the moment she noticed his expression. He didn't need to utter any word for her to know something was wrong. Her heartbeat increased as she imagined the worst-case scenarios. "What did you find?" Ezekiel asked in anticipation. "Nothing," Simon answered as he shook his head. "What do you mean by nothing?" The surveillance cameras recorded nothing. The system had been down even before the ball began, Simon explained. The discovery made Ezekiel realize that it was nothing but a plan. The surveillance cameras in the pack house had never gone down since they were installed. It was too much of a coincidence that every camera shut down at the same time on a day like this. Something fishy was going on, and Ezekiel was going to get to the bottom of it. Aiden couldn't just disappear without anyone seeing him. With that thought in mind, he decided to interrogate everyone around, starting from the Omegas. Since they consisted of more than 70% of the pack and they were literally everywhere, one of them might have seen something. He gathered all of the Omega servants at the family house first, since that was where Aiden got missing. Alyssa watched as Ezekiel interrogated every Omega servants around. She was observing the expressions on each of their faces when her eyes caught something, rather someone. An Omega at the back was shivering in fear and guilt. When the Omega noticed Ezekiel was drawing closer to where she stood, she tried to escape through the multitude of the other Omega servants, but Alyssa was quick. "Stop that servant!" she ordered as she pointed at the girl escaping. The other Omegas around her held her back from leaving the hall, as per their Luna's command. Alyssa walked over to where the girl stood. Her eyes were cold and menacing. When Alyssa got to where she was, the Omega fell her knees and yelled out in fear, "I'm sorry, she made me do it. I never wanted a hand in it, but she threatened me." Just like Alyssa had suspected, the Omega knew something. "What did you do?" Alyssa questioned. The lady bowed her head in fear of uttering the next words. "Your Luna asked you a question," Ezekiel roared in his alpha tone, scaring the Omega the more, causing her to spill the truth. "I had a hand in the disappearance of your son." The Omega answered immediately. Alyssa swallowed a huge lump as reality dawned on her. Her son isn't missing. Rather, he had been kidnapped. There was only one person that would do something like this to her. Only that person had a lot to gain in seeing her miserable. She knew who it was, but she still had to ask. She took in a deep breath. "Who sent you?" she croaked out in a shaky voice. The Omega looked up to stare at Alyssa with a pleading look in her eyes. "She left me no choice. It was either your son or my family," she explained. "I asked who sent you," Alyssa asked again in a louder voice. "Cindy. Cindy was the mastermind," the maid replied. Alyssa had expected it to be her, but it still came as a huge blow. Who would have thought a day like this would come? The same woman that had tried to end her life just days ago has her son now. How could this be? How could she let her guard down? How could she let them kidnap her jewel? Ezekiel tried to console Alyssa, but she wasn't listening to him. She was in such a frenzied state that nothing else mattered to her, not even the love of her life. Watching Alyssa at her breaking point was the most traumatic scene for Ezekiel. He couldn't even protect his son from the mess he caused. He should have been better. He turned back to face the Omega. "Where is she now?" he asked. "I don't know. I wasn't the one that took him away. I only helped in creating a distraction for her escape." The Omega answered. A distraction. No wonder the ball was in such an uproar all of a sudden. Alyssa could have sworn someone pushed her into the fountain. Now it was clear that she had fell for Cindy's games again. They wanted a perfect chance to kidnap her baby. How could she have been so stupid to leave her son all by himself? "So you weren't the only one?" Ezekiel asked again. "No, Alpha." The Omega answered in a shaky tone. "Where are the rest of them?" The Omega raised her head and turned to face a bunch of other Omega servants standing at a corner. Since they had already been caught, they tried to make a run for it, but the guards outside caught them easily. Ezekiel couldn't help but notice that the apprehended Omegas were the Samu ones that worked under Cindy when she was still at the pack. He never should have let them go scot-free after Cindy's expulsion. He never expected they would still be working under her, even after she had been chased out of the pack. He was about to order them to be tortured by the guards when he heard his phone ringing. It was a call from an unsaved number. The number was familiar to him, and he could already tell who it was. He clenched his fists as he answered the call. "My love, how's your investigation going?" Cindy's taunting voice resounded from the other end. "Need me to tell you what you're dying to know?" "My love, how's your investigation going?" Cindy's taunting voice resounded from the other end. "Need me to tell you what you're dying to know?" Even though Ezekiel wasn't seeing Cindy, he could already picture the expression on her face. She was gloating at him, mocking his failure to protect his own family. "Why wouldn't she? When you're the one at fault," his wolf blurted out from within. Anger was an understatement as to what he was feeling. "You brought her into the lives of our mate and son. You gave her the power she's now using against you. If you had never been lenient with her in the first place, if you had listened to me when I warned you to send her away when things hadn't gotten so severe, would this have happened? I told you to reject her outright. You had found your mate and you still didn't want to let her go. I warned you about keeping 2 women with you, but you never for once listened to me. You were so foolish, so stupid, and you think you are always right. You saw the signs, but chose to ignore them, thinking Cindy is still the same girl you initially fell in love with when you were still a kid. Now, she isn't even facing you and our mate head-on. She knows the one person she would use to make you both suffer, and she has him in her clothes. Who knows what she's doing to Aiden? The girl is insane, and she had no fear in kidnapping Aiden from the Lack House. That says a lot about how she views you. Weak, stupid, and useless, even to your own family." His wolf rained more insults, venom dripping in every word. Ezekiel kept mute as his wolf continued with his insults. His wolf wasn't lying, so he could refute his wolf's accusations. If he had listened to him in the first place, Cindy would have gone crazy. If he had just let her go before he got married to Alyssa, she wouldn't have held it against him for this long. Why didn't he see the signs earlier? She had been showing signs that she was going crazy. No sane woman would ever do what she did when she was still with him. All of her plots, her lies, her evil acts to everyone around her, even her own servants, he shouldn't have been so blind to what she was doing. He shouldn't have indulged her the way he did. Now, his family had to suffer for his mistakes. No, he couldn't make the same mistake he did before. He had to find a way to bring his son back, or Alyssa would never forgive him. Hell, he wouldn't be able to forgive himself too if something bad were to happen to Aiden. After all, he caused all this. So he mind-linked his beta since he was still on the call with Cindy. He wanted to trace her location, and to do that, he had to keep talking with Cindy. So he tried to keep her on the call, and as expected, Cindy kept rambling on and on like a maniac. Most of her words were taunts about how they all were so stupid to fall into her trap. Ezekiel was angry as she kept insulting him, but he had to keep his cool. His son's life was at stake. He needed to find their whereabouts first before he says anything that would make her disconnect from the call. The call was on loudspeaker so everyone around could hear what she was saying. Her tirade was getting annoying, and she wasn't really saying what Alyssa wanted to hear, so she interjected her words. "What do you want in exchange for my son's release?" Alyssa asked her. Cindy's side of the call went silent. Ezekiel checked to see if she was still on the call. He was about to call out to her when her voice returned. This time it came with a gleeful tone. "I thought you would never ask," she yelled out with a soft chuckle. "This is the reason I like talking to you, Alyssa. You're always quick-witted and you know what to say at times like this." She praised with a hint of mockery laced in her voice. "So what do you want?" Ezekiel asked impatiently. "Now, what I want is simple. I've always been begging you to do this for years, so you should know what it is, baby," she said to Ezekiel. Ezekiel felt his heart skip a beat as he already knew what she wanted. No, anything but that. He couldn't do that to Alyssa, not at this time. He wasn't sure she would be able to handle it. Ezekiel's silence made Cindy grow impatient. "If you want to act like you don't know what I'm tailing about, I'll say it out loud then. I want you to publicly reject the whore you call a mate," she said in a loud voice. Ezekiel turned to face Alyssa, his heart racing. He couldn't do that. He was already at the verge of losing his son. He couldn't lose his mate, too. "Do it now, or the next thing you'll see is your son's head sent to you in a box," Cindy threatened, Her voice indicated that she wasn't joking. She hated Aiden so much, so doing something as gruesome as that to him wasn't a big deal to her. And Ezekiel knew that. He couldn't let his son come into harm's way. His mind and Wolf were screaming at him to not reject his mate, that he should rethink his next words, but out of fear for what his son might be passing through in Cindy's hands, he had no choice but to do it. I, Alpha Ezekiel Crawford, reject you, Luna Alyssa, as my mate and Luna. He whispered the words shakily. No one around would expect to see their Alpha this broken. As those words left his mouth, he felt like a piece of him had disappeared. He did it! After all the years of Alyssa's constant pleas for him to let her go, this was all it took for him to finally reject her. Cindy's maniacal laugh brought him back to reality. See, baby, it wasn't that hard, she said as she continued laughing. I have upheld my end of the deal. It's time for you to do it too. Ezekiel croaked out as he tried to suppress his pain and anger. Her laughter died down immediately. Why will I do that? She asked. We made a deal. If you actually thought I was going to uphold my end of the deal, that only makes you more stupid than you actually are, she insulted. Why will I let the bastard go after everything I did to bring him here? I told you before, I'll be back to exert my revenge on you. That's the only promise I intend on keeping, she said before ending the call abruptly. Ezekiel stared at his phone's blank screen like he was in a trance. What has he done? He had dejected his mate, all for what? Why did he trust Cindy again? Why is he always making the wrong decisions? Just then, everyone's phones buzzed with a live stream link. It was from an unknown number, but they were curious to see what they were supposed to watch, so they clicked on the link. A gasp escaped Alyssa's lips when she saw her son, her baby, tied up like an animal. His eyes were closed like he was in a deep sleep while the devil herself was standing right next to him. Are you watching this, Alyssa? She asked as she looked up to stare at the camera. Your precious son is at my mercy, she taunted as she brought out a sharp-looking knife from a box resting close to her. No, 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 Alyssa muttered as she shook her head vehemently. She couldn't hold back the tears from escaping her eyes as Cindy moved the knife close to her son's face. You stole my life, my status, and my man. Watch how I take away the one you cherish the most, Cindy said as she pressed the knife on Aiden's face, cutting his skin in the process. Please! Alyssa yelled out like Cindy could hear her, but the crazy lady didn't stop. She had a calm demeanor on, humming a lullaby as she drew marks on the boy's face, and never once did Aiden flinch. Alyssa couldn't watch it anymore, so she turned off her phone and bowed her head in pain, anger, sorrow. The emotions within her were so much for her to handle. There was just one emotion that dominated the rest: anger. There is only one person that's to blame for this, and he is here with her, doing nothing to stop the psychotic lady from maiming her son. She walked over to where Ezekiel stood, and before he could utter a word, she raised her hand and slapped him hard across the face. The Omegas around couldn't contain their shock when they saw their Alpha being hit on the face by his own Luna. If anything happens to my son, I'll never forgive you, she yelled at him through gritted teeth, and she meant what she said. Ezekiel didn't fight back, nor did he try to defend himself. He caused everything that was happening, so he deserved way worse than what she just did. Alyssa had been through a lot that day, and watching her son being cut by Cindy was the top of it. Who knew what she was doing to him now or what she planned to do later? Her body couldn't handle the stress and the numerous emotions she was going through at a time, so it gave up on her. She collapsed. Seeing her fall, Ezekiel moved to catch her, but Melissa got to her first. She caught the unconscious Alyssa and then carried her away. There was nothing Ezekiel could do other than watch in silence as Melissa left with his mate. His heart was weighed down with unbearable sense of guilt and regret. He shouldn't have been so headstrong and stupid. He should have been a better head for his family. Instead, he was the one causing them pain and suffering. Later that day, Alyssa's teary eyes flew open like she had just woken up from a nightmare. It felt like one to her. Rather, she hoped it was one. Melissa, who had been with her all through, ran over to her side when she realized that she was already awake. "Where's Aiden? Is he here?" she asked as she stared around the room, praying fervently within her that it was all nothing but a scary nightmare. "Alyssa?" Melissa called out to her, and she turned to face the woman. The look on her face made her face reality. It wasn't a scary nightmare. Her son had really been kidnapped by Ezekiel's ex-lover who had already gone insane. "Oh my God!" she muttered as she started to cry again. What did she ever do to deserve what she was going through? Why is it that every time she thinks all will be well, something always happens to remind her that she would never live a happy life no matter how hard she tries? She had tried to ignore her problems and run away from them, but they always end up catching up with her. Now, the worst had happened. She could take anything that comes her way, but not this one. Her son was her life, and she wouldn't be able to survive if something bad were to happen to him. As she cried her eyes out in pain and sorrow, Melissa couldn't help but feel for her. Alyssa's tears reminded her of how she felt when she lost her years ago. She never wanted any other mother, talk less of her own daughter, to go through what she did. If it was possible, she would have found a way to find Cindy, but no one could. Cindy was smart enough to cover her tracks, leaving no clues as to where she might be. The only thing she could think of at that moment was to console her daughter. She sat next to Alyssa and wrapped her hands around her. She didn't say one word, but her actions conveyed how sorry she was for Alyssa. Alyssa, on the other hand, didn't hold back. Her tears increased when images of Cindy creating several cuts on her son's face flashed in her head. She didn't continue with the live stream earlier as it was so gruesome for her to watch, so she doesn't know what happened. She let out a small hiccup and she tried to suppress her sobs. The live stream? Did she stop what she was doing to my baby? She croaked out as she lifted her head from Melissa's shoulder. Melissa sighed before answering, "No, the live stream is still ongoing." Alyssa's eyes widened in shock and fear. Why? What is she still doing? She reached for the bedstand and grabbed her phone that was lying there. Then she clicked on the link to the live stream, and just like Melissa had said, the live stream was still ongoing. This time, her son was awake, but Cindy still didn't stop what she was doing. She ignored his loud cries and kept marking his face with shallow cuts. Since he was tied down, he couldn't struggle with her. His cries were getting louder and more painful, but Cindy seemed to enjoy the pain he was going through as the smile on her face only got wider. How was he able to endure the pain and cuts for so long? Alyssa slapped her hands against her mouth as she muffled down a sob. Every pain her son was passing through was her fault. If she had been a better mother, if she hadn't left him alone in the first place. All of a sudden, Cindy stopped with the cuts and raised his head so he could stare at her. Alyssa breathed a small sigh of relief. At least, she stopped. For now. How else can I torture you? She asked as she ran the pointed end of the knife across his face. Alyssa's heart skipped a beat when she heard the question. What is she planning to do now? "You give me an idea," she said to Aiden as she gripped his chin harshly, making him grunt in pain. Cindy seemed more unhinged as she suggested more ways to torture him when she realized Aiden wasn't going to be of help. Alyssa could easily notice the tired look on Aiden's face. He couldn't continue like this. He was too weak and fragile to handle whatever the maniac plans to do next. Alyssa couldn't help but feel for her son. Watching him in pain nearly broke her. We can't lose hope yet. We need to stay calm if we want to save him. Her wolf comforted, but Aiden's pain-filled look only broke Alyssa the more. Just then she received a call from Lily. "How are you?" Lily asked the moment Alyssa picked up the call. She had seen the love stream and were willing to do whatever it took to help. Hearing that question from Lily, Alyssa broke down again. How was she supposed to feel when her son was suffering, and worse, she couldn't even do anything to help him? The soft sobs from Alyssa's end made Lily realize she had asked the wrong question. How did she expect Alyssa to feel when something like this was happening? "I know of a skilled hacker that can help track Cindy's location," she said, hoping it would lift Alyssa's mood, and it did. Not just her, Melissa also felt a glimmer of hope when she heard Lily's words. "You do?" Alyssa asked as placed the phone on her ear again. "Yes. Hopefully, he would be able to find out where they are." Lily answered, making Alyssa feel a bit of hope. Thank you so much," Alyssa thanked profusely. You don't have to thank me. This is Aiden we are talking about, and I can't stand by when something like this is going on, Lily said. All right. Please contact the person immediately. We don't know what the psycho might do next, Alyssa said. All right. Lily agreed before ending the call. Finally, a good news. Just then, they heard a knock on the door. Come in, Melissa said, and Simon walked into the room. Luna, Ezekiel wants to see you, he said to Alyssa. Before Alyssa could respond, she felt her phone vibrate, indicating she had just received a message. It was from an unknown number, but when she clicked on it, she knew immediately who it was. If you want to save your bastard, you have to come alone. An address and a meeting time was sent along with a warning. If you decide to bring anyone, your son won't live another minute. Alyssa quickly turned off her phone before Melissa could see the message. Knowing Cindy, she could already tell it was a trap, but she was still willing to go. Her son's life was at stake, and who knows what would happen if she chose to stay back instead or tell anyone about it. For Aiden, she would do anything, even if it meant putting her life on the line. She turned back to face Simon. Tell Ezekiel I won't be meeting with him, she said, and then left for the bathroom. She shut the door behind her and then stared at her reflection through the large mirror. She sniffed and used her hand to wipe away the tears from her face. Hold on, baby. Mommy's coming for you. After the call between Alyssa and Lily's ended, Lily's eyes rested on her phone, specifically a number. She didn't want to call him, but he was the only one she could think of at the moment. She thought there would never be a day she would need his help this bad, but now she had to get in touch with him for Alyssa and Aiden. Enough of the hesitation. Aiden comes first, she said to herself, took a deep breath before dialing the number. The call connected quickly, like he had been waiting for her to call him. You called me today. Very unexpected. Noah's distinct British accent rang from the other end of the call. His voice carried a hint of surprise. Well, if not for Aiden's situation, Lily would have never contacted him at all. The only reason she was like this towards Noah was because he was her fated mate. Noah came from a very powerful British pack. He is the son of the Alpha. During her time at the UK, when Ezekiel had sent her out of the pack because of his jealousy, they met. Not only was he the heir of a very powerful pack, he was also a top-tier hacker, but Lily didn't want anything to do with him. He had everything a female could possibly want in her mate, and he wanted her, but she didn't. He proposed marriage to her, but she wasn't ready for any commitment. When Ezekiel finally allowed her to come back home, she took that as her chance to reject and leave him. Despite her rejection, Noah didn't relent. He followed her to her pack, though he promised not to interfere with her life. He just wanted to be close to her. The two of them had maintained a physical relationship since that time, without any feelings attached. Well, just for Lily, though. However, their most recent meeting ended with an heated quarrel when Noah asked for their relationship to be taken to the next step. He wanted an official title in her life. He wasn't happy, nor was he satisfied with the way things were between them, even though he had first agreed to it. He wanted more, but a physical relationship was all Lily could give him. After days of not speaking to each other, she had to swallow her pride and call him first. I need your help, she said. Really? Why would you, the great Lily, need help or anything from someone like me? He asked. Cindy could hear the mockery in his voice from a mile away. She shut her eyes briefly as she tried to hold herself back from uttering the next few words that were in her mind. Calm down. You're doing this for Aiden, she reminded herself. I'm serious, Noah. I really need your help, she said after she had calmed down. Hearing the seriousness in her voice, Noah decided to stop mocking her. Their last encounter ended badly. He wasn't even sure they would ever talk again. But since she called him first today, someone that treasures her ego like it was some priced jewel, then she must really need his help. All right, what do you need my help for? He asked, making Lily sigh in relief. He was finally listening to her. Lily briefly explained all that happened to him and pleaded for his help in tracking Cindy's whereabouts. Noah's side of the call was silent for a short while, but his voice returned, and it carried a hint of jealousy. You are always willing to do anything for your friends, even go back on your words, breaking your principles in the process. He reprimanded. Please, just for it. The poor boy's in danger. Lily pleaded, ignoring his sulking because she had to get Aiden away from Cindy at all cost. Noah sighed, but he still decided to help. He asked Lily to send him the link to the live stream, and she did immediately, so he got down to work. Lily was still on the call with him as she waited patiently for a feedback. After a brief moment of silence, she heard his voice again. I have to admit, this lady is good, he praised. What? Why? Lily asked, her heart fearing that something might be wrong. She completely blocked me out. Not just me. Any other person that tries to track her location wouldn't be able to do so. He answered. How? There's no way she can completely hide her location, Lily said as she tried to be hopeful. Though Lily knew Cindy was a very smart snake, she wasn't that smart to be able to hide herself from someone as good as Noah. He was a good hacker, so he's supposed to be able to find Cindy. Actually, she can if she takes extreme measures like encrypting and rerouting the live stream multiple times. It's hard for me to find the exact location, he explained. Hearing his words, Lily lost hope. If he, of all people, couldn't get her location, how would they be able to get Aiden back? Alyssa. She is suffering already. How will she be able to break the news to her? So you can't find them? She asked sadly. No, I can. I just need more time, he explained. His words lifted her spirits immediately. Even though it would take more time, there was still hope of finding them. But I would need you by my side, he added. Me? What for? I can't even hack, she answered. You don't need to do anything, but your presence will help speed up the process, he explained. Lily rolled her eyes as a small scoff left her mouth. What a lame and transparent excuse. She should have known he would use this situation to his advantage. Though she knew what he wanted, she still relented. This was about saving a life, and she wasn't really at a spot to reject his open advances. She had no choice but to go to his place like he had requested. Even though Melissa had taken the unconscious Alyssa away, he didn't fail to check up on her through his servants. When he found out that she was already awake, he sent Simon to call her in. Even though she hated him now after his open rejection and him being the cause of their misfortunes, he hoped she would give him a listening ear, but it was nothing but just an hope. After Simon broke the news of Alyssa not wanting to with Ezekiel, their rift only got worse. To Ezekiel, Alyssa was avoiding him because she didn't want to see him. Merely looking at him would make her angrier than she was already, and the blames would return. Well, not like she was wrong. He dragged his family into his messy life. Now, they were the ones paying for it. What was worse was that even after keeping Cindy on the line for so long, her number was still untraceable. It was like they weren't even anywhere on Earth. What about the live stream? You must have been able to find something? He asked Husbeta, holding on to that tiny but of hope. Simon stared at his alpha in silence. Through the expression on his face, Ezekiel could already tell that their efforts were futile. It was a dead end. Her live stream also was encrypted with multiple layers of protection, making it hard for us to track their location, Simon explained sadly. Fuck! The revelation drove Ezekiel into a fit of rage, and he smashed whatever was at his reach. The table in front of him, the couch, even the chandelier wasn't safe. He was so frustrated, so angry, that something like this could happen at his pack, which was termed the biggest and strongest in the South. It was all his fault. He showcased himself too much to the enemy within. He thought that his enemies were only outside his gates, but Cindy's betrayal made him realize that enemies can emerge from anywhere. What's worse was that it came from someone he least expected it from. She knew him in and out, his strengths and his weaknesses, and she was able to use it against him. Now he is powerless, and the only thing he could do was watch as she makes his son suffer the worst torture possible. There was nothing he could think of anymore. He had interrogated and tortured all the Omegas that aided her with her ploy, but none of them knew where she took him. They only claimed to have helped sneak the boy out of the pack and left him in the woods. Ezekiel went into the woods by himself with hopes of catching their scent, but there was nothing. Nothing he could use to trace them. Even the rogues that attacked the pack earlier to distract Ezekiel knew nothing. They claimed that they were only paid by a guy to do what they did. They knew nothing about Cindy nor his son. No matter how much they were tortured, their stories were the same. Even at the brink of death, no one could tell him where his son had been taken to. Cindy had done so well in covering her tracks because she knew she would be death meat if Ezekiel were to find her. Ezekiel shut his eyes as a wave of helplessness washed through him. He had never felt this way in a long time, useless and helpless. If only he had done the right thing in the first place, let go of Cindy before he tied the knot with Alyssa, none of these would have happened. Now, Alyssa wasn't the only one suffering from his wrong choices like 5 years ago. He had succeeded in dragging his son into his mess too. He screamed in anger and punched the wall hard, making a crack appear on the spot he had hit. His knuckles were bleeding. The pain was unbearable, but it didn't match the pain of losing his son, the pain of seeing his mate hate him forever. Don't lose hope yet. We still have someone we haven't interrogated yet. His wolf's voice resounded from within. And who would that be? Who else in my pack would have colluded with Cindy to betray me? He asked. Cindy's one and only supporter when she was still around. You know her well since she's related to you, his wolf explained. The veins in Ezekiel's forehead became visible as fury surged through him. How could he have forgotten so soon about how close they were? Her involvement was more than certain. It made sense. She also hated Alyssa to the extent that she would do anything, literally anything, to make her suffer, even if it meant putting her own brother in misery. There's no way Cindy would have been able to execute her plan easily without her help. Without uttering a word to his beta, who had been standing with him, he stormed out of his office. He entered his car at the garage and drove off to Emma's pack. Her husband was the alpha of a small pack that was very close to theirs, so Emma had no problem with moving from her pack to theirs whenever she felt like it. The warriors at the pack's gate noticed a car driving towards their territory with great speed. They wanted to order it to stop, but when they saw who was driving in it, they quickly opened the gates. Ezekiel parked the car at the front of Emma's residence and entered the building, ignoring every greetings that came his way. In the living room, he saw Emma watching TV leisurely like she hadn't just collided with a maniac to ruin her brother's life. She stood up immediately when she noticed Ezekiel's presence. "Ezekiel, you didn't tell me you were visiting," she said as a wide smile appeared on her face. "You helped her, didn't you?" he asked, ignoring her greetings. "What are you talking about?" Emma asked as a confused look appeared on her face. "Cindy, you helped with her plans," he repeated. Emma immediately went through shock as she didn't expect him to find out so soon, but as expected, she chose to deny it instead. "Help Cindy with what? I haven't seen her in a while." Her words were cut short when Ezekiel suddenly grabbed her by the throat. Her husband was right there, watching his wife fight for her life in the hands of her own brother, but he couldn't do anything other than stand by like a coward. He feared that Ezekiel would pour out his anger on him instead. Besides, this was an issue between siblings, so he shouldn't step in. "I can't breathe." Emma croaked out as she tried to pull his hands away, but that only made him tighten his grip. "Do you take me for a fool? Just because I stay silent all the time and let you do the things you do, doesn't mean I'll watch you lie to my face like I'm fucking stupid," he yelled in anger, while Emma struggled harder to breathe. "I'll ask one more time, and I expect nothing but the truth from you," he warned, while Emma struggled to nod in understanding. "Did you help Cindy with her plans?" he asked again in his alpha tone. His eyes showed that if she lied, she would suffer for it. Why, yes," she stammered out. Ezekiel was expecting that answer. He knew his sister could do something like that. He still dreaded it. This was his only sibling. They grew up together, but she could do something like this to him. "Fuck!" he cussed out as he pushed her away, making her fall on the bare floor. She ignored the pain she felt when her ass landed on the hard ground and focused on taking deep breaths. "Why?" he asked as he turned to face her. "What? Why would you do this to me?" His eyes were red, but not from anger. All he felt for her at that moment were pain and betrayal. "I know you never liked Alyssa, but why would you do such a thing to her? You are a mother, too. How would you feel if your son was taken from you? Because of you, the boy's suffering," he said. Aiden was kidnapped? She asked in surprise. Ezekiel scoffed as he watched the expression on her face. What now? You want to act like you didn't know her plans? He asked. I didn't, she denied. Seriously? You're lying again to my face, he screamed out, his anger returning. I'm serious, Ezekiel. All I did was provide her with information and some money. I never knew what she was planning to do. She explained, but Ezekiel was still doubtful. He knew what his sister was capable of. He was sure she was only denying the truth to hide Cindy's whereabouts from him. I swear on the moon, goddess, I don't know anything else. Aiden's my nephew too. Really? But you never treated him as one. Ezekiel sneered. I'm telling the truth, Ezekiel. I might be a monster, I might hate Alyssa, but I'm not as cruel to harm a child, she said. Ezekiel stared at her silently. But he badly wanted to believe she was telling the truth, but the things she had done to Alyssa in the past hardened his heart. Your explanation means nothing. Despite knowing what she did to me, you were still in touch with her and helped her even though you claim you don't know what she was up to, and that is a big betrayal from your end. Ezekiel. She pleaded as she tried to hold him, but he slapped her hands away. If I don't find out where Cindy is soon, if anything should happen to my son, you'll pay dearly for it. This time, your punishment won't be the little ones I used to give. I'll make sure you pay dearly for interfering with my life, I warned, and stormed off before she could plead with him. She shut the door behind her and then stared at her reflection through the large mirror. Her eyes were red and swollen from all of the tears she had been shedding. Her hair was way worse, making her look so messy. She sniffed and used her hand to wipe away the tears from her face. Hold on, baby. Mommy's coming for you, she said to herself as she forced a bright smile on her face, but it only appeared as a grimace. No matter how hard she tried to have hope, she couldn't help but have that nagging feeling within her that kept on warning her that it was nothing but a trap. Cindy wouldn't have gone through so much stress to kidnap her son and just release him days later. She obviously had no intention of letting Aiden go. She knew Cindy would take this as her chance to finally eliminate her, something she had been trying so hard to do for years. Still, she couldn't bear to watch her son in pain. Cindy was a maniac, and there was no telling how and when she was going to torture Aiden again. Alyssa took in a harsh breath and gripped her phone tightly. Whatever she needed to do, no matter the problems that may arise, she had to get her son back. But for now, she had to hide the truth from everyone, as she knew they would all try to stop her from going. She had to act like all was fine, and when the time for her to leave arrives, she would do it without raising any alarm. With that thought in mind, Alyssa turned on the faucet and washed her tear-stained face with the running water. After that, she dried her wet face before staring at the mirror again. The water had done a good job in washing away the tears on her face, but it wasn't enough to wash off her sadness and heartbreak. It will all be over soon. To make it seem like all was well, Alyssa forced herself to continue with her normal daily routine. She maintained her body, she engaged in normal conversations with everyone, and never for once missed a meal. She was trying to get ready for what's to come. She really didn't know what to expect when she meets with Cindy, but one thing is for sure, their meeting won't go down without a fight. Her last fight with Cindy and her realize how strong she is. Cindy wasn't the former Beta's daughter for nothing, but she wasn't going to give up now. Her son was waiting for her to go save him, so she needed to prepare well if she wants to leave there alive with him. Lily made sure to call regularly to check up on her and to update her about the tracking process. As expected, their location was still so hard to find, but Alyssa wasn't disappointed. She had everything she needed to get her son back, but she just had to wait for the perfect time. Melissa also checked up on her often to see how she was faring. The woman was surprised to see Alyssa had almost returned back to how she used to be before Aiden's kidnap. She didn't look like the day she fainted. She was getting better than expected. Though it was suspicious, she was happy Alyssa didn't let her problems weigh her down. Alyssa was able to deceive everyone with her pretense so well that no one noticed what she was actually going through. She might look fine only on the outside, but only she knew what she was actually passing through. The nightmares she gets every night, the haunting illusions of her bloody son that followed her everywhere she went. Even the thought of not seeing anyone again, the thoughts of not being able to save her son and return back safely with him, the thought of losing her life in the process. They all haunted her day by day. The fear of the unknown made her soften her attitude towards Ezekiel. She feared she might not survive her meeting with Cindy, so she decided to enjoy the little time she had left with him. When Ezekiel sends his beta to deliver meals to her, she doesn't reject them unlike before. She doesn't avoid him anymore, and she also stopped blaming him for what happened. Her sudden change surprised Ezekiel and also made him suspicious. It got to the extent that he couldn't help but reach out to her. Alyssa was in her room, staring at the message from Cindy when she heard a knock on the door. Startled, she quickly put her phone away. "Come in," she said as she tried to act normal. The door was pushed open from the outside, and Ezekiel walked into the room. "Ezekiel, what are you doing here?" she asked in surprise as she didn't expect him to come find her. "I wanted to see how you are doing," Ezekiel answered softly as he walked further into the room. He pulled a small chair and placed it right in front of where she sat before taking his seat there. Their sitting positions made them face each other. "How are you doing?" he asked as he stared at her face, her eyes mostly, hoping he would be able to read the expression on her face, even though she tells him a lie. "I'm fine," she answered with no expression on her face, like she knew what he was doing. Ezekiel let out a small sigh and pulled one of her hands that was leisurely resting on her laps into his larger hand. He massaged it softly and opened his mouth to speak again. "You can lie to others, but not to me," he whispered. "What are you talking about?" Alyssa asked as she tried to feign ignorance. "I know you better than you think I do, and I can tell all isn't well with you. You don't have to hide your pain from me, too," he said. "What do you expect me to do then?" "I need you to talk to me. You don't have to bottle up your pain and suffer in silence," he answered. "Will that change anything?" Her question surprised Ezekiel. He opened his mouth, but he couldn't utter a word. "If I talk about the immense pain I'm feeling, would it help in bringing my baby back?" she asked again. Her eyes were gradually showing the pain she had been keeping to herself. "No, it won't," Ezekiel croaked out sadly. The look in her eyes instantly filled him with more regrets. "But it would help in lessening your pain," he added. "And what good would that be if it only makes you blame and hate yourself the more?" Alyssa asked him. "I should hate myself. Like you said, it's all my fault. I left you guys unprotected that day. I brought Cindy to your life. I indulged her and let her do. Not just you, I am also to blame. I left Aiden alone that day too," Alyssa said, cutting him off. "But that isn't even up to half of my mistakes. If only I had." Ezekiel's words were cut off when Alyssa suddenly held his cheeks in her hands. "Blaming ourselves isn't going to help now," she said. "You're right." Ezekiel let out a small smile as he held her hands that were resting on his cheeks. "That's the reason I'm hoping you will trust me this time. I know I've made a lot of mistakes, but I'll never let you down again. I'll find Aiden and bring him back to you," he vowed. "I know you will," Alyssa muttered as she smiled back at him. "So, please, don't make any reasoned decisions. Don't try to confront Cindy alone," he pleaded with her like he already knew her plans. Alyssa didn't answer him. She couldn't bring herself to make a promise she couldn't keep, so the only thing she could do was give him a wide smile. "Thank you," he whispered in relief as he pressed a kiss on her lips. Alyssa wrapped her hands around his neck and kissed him back. He gave Alyssa a slight push and her back landed on the soft bed. He took his position on top of her and resumed with their passionate kiss. The room was filled with their soft moans as they held onto each other like it was going to be their last. Later that night, after their passionate moment together, Ezekiel fell asleep with his hands wrapped tightly around Alyssa. Alyssa stared at his sleeping face with a sad smile on her lips. "I'm so sorry, Ezekiel, but I need to do this for Aiden." She apologized before placing a deep kiss on his lips. She pried his arms from her waist, stood up from the bed, and put on her clothes. She gave him one last glance before escaping into the darkness. A wide and evil smile appeared on Cindy's face when she saw Alyssa approaching the basement through the surveillance cameras that were installed both outside and inside the building. She actually came, she muttered in surprise as a snicker left her mouth. Well, why wouldn't she? She turned to face Aiden, who was still bundled up at a corner. She walked up to him and crouched close to where he was. "When her precious bastard is here with me," she added, her amusement only growing as she watched the boy's eyes drooping. He was about to fall asleep, but tried his best to stay awake. She scoffed as she watched him. He was trying so hard to fight the venom's effects, even though it was only going to worsen the situation. He should have just slept and let it take effect. Well, him being awake will only make things more interesting, she thought to herself as she stared at the syringe she had used on him earlier. She gripped his chin harshly and lifted his small face so he could stare at her. Her action wiped off every tiredness he had immediately. "Guess what?" she muttered as she trailed her fingers on the wound on his face. Aiden turned his attention to her, then moved it away like she was someone unimportant. Cindy scoffed and then smirked again. "He wants to act strong? Let's see how strong he'll be when I break the news to him. Your mom is here to save you," she announced, and just like she had expected, she noticed how his expression changed to that of shock and fear. He was shocked that his mother would actually come for him, and at the same time, he feared for her well-being. Just staring at Cindy, he was able to tell that she wouldn't let his and his mother leave here alive. He shook his head vehemently as he struggled to get on his knees despite being tied up. "Please stop what you're doing. Don't do anything to my mother. You have me already," he pleaded. "And what use do I have for you alone? Why do you think I went through all that stress just to get you?" she asked him. "Please, I beg you, let my mom go and I'll do anything you want. You don't have to drag her into this," he pleaded once again. Cindy chuckled and turned to face him. "You're so naive," she muttered with a small tut and walked away from where he was. Aiden didn't stop pleading with her at the top of his voice, but his loud cries were ignored by Cindy. At some point, his voice became an earsore to Cindy. Seeing that he wasn't showing any signs of stopping, she decided to teach him a lesson. She picked up a small whip and walked over to where he was. "Since you don't want to stop crying, I'll gladly give you something to cry about," she said, and she landed the first hit on his back. Aiden let out a soft groan as he felt the pain from the whip sear through his back. He was sure it would leave a scar, but he didn't stop begging. He crawled shakily towards her and pleaded more, only earning more annoyance from Cindy. She whipped him again and again. The pain in his back felt like a burn, and he was slowly getting weaker, but he didn't relent with his pleas. Cindy was about to land the fourth hit when she heard the door to the basement creak open. She turned back to see Alyssa watching her with her eyes widened in shock. "You came," she said with a dark chuckle, ignoring the look in Alyssa's eyes. Her excitement was reaching its peak. "What are you doing?" Alyssa asked angrily when she noticed the state her son was in. "Teaching him a lesson. If you had done a good job as a mother, he would have learned to never talk back at an adult." Cindy mocked as she dropped the whip on the floor. "Now, over to you. What took you so long?" she asked as she walked over to the table where all of her torturing equipment's laid. Alyssa didn't reply her as her eyes never left Aiden. She was thinking of ways to get him out of that place. She was sure he wouldn't be able to go on much longer in his state. Alyssa's silence made Cindy turn to face her. She followed Alyssa's stare and noticed she was still staring at Aiden. "I know you must be wondering why your son is in such a state. The beating and cuts obviously didn't make him that way," she said. Alyssa stared at her son again, only to realize that she was right. His lips were turning blue, and the color on his face were already leaving. It looked like he had no blood in his body. "What did you do to him?" Alyssa asked in fear. Cindy smirked and turned to face Aiden. "Why don't you take a guess?" "Was he poisoned?" Alyssa thought to herself as she heaved heavily. Her tensed state was making it harder for her to breathe. "Let me give you a hint. It's a flower and it's purple in color." Alyssa's eyes widened when she realized what it was. "Wolfsbane!" Bingo! Cindy said as she let out a soft chuckle. Wolf's bane was lethal to all wolves, and if she had indeed given some to Aiden like she claimed to, there was no saving him, unless… Well, I have an antidote, Cindy muttered as she waved another syringe in her hands. Even if she were to find a way to take Aiden out of this place, she wasn't sure he would be able to survive it because the poison was already taking effects in his body. He was just a cub, so he wouldn't be able to last longer with wolfsbane in his system. There was only one way to get the antidote now. Cindy noticed Alyssa's intense stare on the syringe she was holding, and that made her chuckle. If you want the antidote, you'll have to do everything I tell you, she said. Alyssa shut her eyes for a short while. Her plan wasn't going as rosy as she had thought. Like Cindy had expected her to plan a trick, she decided to up her game. Who would have thought she would poison Aiden? No matter what happens, she had to get the antidote from her, even if it meant succumbing to her demands. What do you want? Alyssa croaked out as she held back the tears that were threatening to escape her eyes. I want you to kneel and beg for your son's pathetic life, Cindy ordered. No! Mommy, don't do it! Run! Aiden croaked out from where he laid, but Alyssa didn't budge. How could she run for her life when her son was here, suffering for her own mistakes? Leaving him wasn't an option. She didn't mind dying as long as he would be out of harm's way. Alyssa swallowed a lump in her throat and shakily got on her knees. She clasped her hands together and in a shaky voice, "Please heal my son."